And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Deeper Dive. It is Thursday, December 26th. I am Josh Engleman. I'm joined by Chris Spags. We're brought to you by Gift EV. Get OddsShopper in the Portfolio EV tool for $50 off. Half price right now. Ends today. So make sure you're taking advantage. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow us both on Twitter. And let's have a good day, everybody. Liverpool just picked up a win, so my day can't really get any better. I know you guys don't care, but I care. And that's really all that matters around these parts. Spags, what's up? Merry Christmas.
No, Merry Christmas. Excited to be here. Same to the chat, everybody watching right now. Hopefully it was a good holiday for you guys. It's our first Christmas with my kid actually knowing what's going on for Christmas. So it was a weird, capitalist overload, I feel like, where he's had so many presents, opened them up, immediately just looked for another thing. He told us and told Santa, I want all the things. It's like, oh my God, I just grosses me out that that's where we are in life. But, nice to see the joy and all that. Nice to have family and those things. But I absolutely get what my parents were talking about when I was a kid, where it's like, oh shit, you just waste money on this. And they don't even care about more than one toy.
That is Christmas for you. I barely did anything. It was awesome. Just a nice, relaxing day. Installed steps onto a camper. That was the extent of the hard things that I did yesterday. So
you have a camper?
Very easy. We do.
Ooh, do some camping?
No. Katie takes it to horse shows, so she doesn't have to rent an Airbnb or a hotel or something. So
that makes sense.
I've never slept in it. I don't anticipate doing that anytime soon unless she throws me out.
I thought you were going to maybe hit the road, start doing some streams on the road, make it a lifestyle.
No, the extent of me doing anything with that is pulling it into our driveway. That's about the end of it.
It's something.
Josh, the type of guy to still expect presents from his parents on Christmas. It'd be really cool if they can give me those presents, but considering they're both dead, it's going to be a tough struggle for me to get any of those presents in the door.
That guy didn't know. What an asshole.
No. First one without my dad too. It was really fun. Definitely didn't leave me a present. Definitely didn't leave me a present. So thanks, Not in the AM, bro. Nailed that one. I haven't asked for a present since I was 12 years old. I've told them to stop buying me this shit from high school on. I've hated Christmas forever. So yeah, rub that in your face, brother. That was fun. It's incredibly satisfying. I'm almost happy that it happened.
That's a comeback for those kind of stupid burns.
Yeah. It's just a clear victory for me here on this one. Anyway, OKC, Indy. We got a 7-game slate on DraftKings. We've got a 9-game slate on FanDuel. DraftKings dropped the 2 10 o'clock. So we're done at 8 if you're playing on DraftKings. 2 more games at 10 o'clock for later tonight. What we're starting at 3 games at 7 o'clock. OKC and Indy is the first one. Thunder, 5.5-point favorites in Indiana, 227 total. Nothing all that interesting for OKC. No Alex Caruso today, but they've got plenty of guys that can soak up 19 minutes. We are getting a little bit of ownership coming into Shea, Jalen Williams, and Isaiah Hartenstein. Not too much else coming in to the rest of these guys. Dort's picking up a little. Aaron Wiggins is picking up a little. Mostly value type stuff. Jalen Williams, the most owned guy here, just north of 20% across DraftKings and the FanDuel side. And that all makes a lot of sense to me. I kind of like Shea a little bit more than Jalen Williams, but Jalen Williams obviously easier to get to at 8K. I think those guys should be the guys that are north of 10% ownership, but I don't think we need to go too crazy on any one of them. What do you like here for the Thunder?
I'm getting a lot of Jalen Williams, and we talk about this a lot on the slate, where I always, have a real aversion to loading up on early game plays for the most part, or, the earlier games when you have so many Q tags. We have legit 15 guys right now that are questionable that would have a material impact on the slate, whether they're in or out. So I don't love tying it up here, but I think Jalen Williams makes lineups work pretty well. I was getting him a ton of the Stokastic sims. I got him 31% in my top 150 lineups. And that's with me having Jalen Williams projected a little bit lower than Stokastic. I'm at 41.7 compared to the 44.2 that they have. So I think that's a really big Jalen Williams stand today. And I don't know that he's an appreciably great play, especially if you want to tie up your entire money. So I have kind of an aversion to that, but I am getting him a lot naturally. Getting a lot of Hartenstein as well, which is always the case, getting him about 3x the field compared to the field's 13. And I'm low on SGA. So a lot of Williams, a lot of Hartenstein for me. And frankly, I think those are ones I'm going to manually kind of massage down because it's a lot to tie up on the first game of the slate.
I don't hate it too much. I thought this game might profile a little bit better for OKC, but average pace, average total for today's slate. I don't think it's crazy to get a bunch of Jalen Williams. I wouldn't hate it too much. The only downside is really just sort of blocking yourself out from any 8 p.m. swaps, which could be plentiful depending on how like the Giannis Dame injury news goes, or some other stuff going on in those 8 o'clocks. But yeah, I mean, look, Jalen Williams is really good at basketball. Having too much of him is not the worst thing in the world. So I know you're going to give me some other names that are probably less appealing than Jalen Williams. I'll push back on those.
No, and I think that's fair too. And I don't think he would kill you on the slate, but like if I have lineups tied up with Jalen Williams and Bobby Portis becomes available, like I think that's sort of the thing I would like to avoid, let alone just any value and having the flexibility. But yeah, on a slate, look, he's too cheap. I think it's probably the main thing, no matter what projection set you're using. So if I'm getting him in a third of lineups and I have him less than Stokastic, like I think he's probably one of the better plays on the slate, just based on his face, or on his face. And his beautiful face as well.
Oh, great. Well, ever the wordsmith.
It's the day after Christmas, Josh. It's been a long day of content. Sometimes you just got to talk about a guy's face.
I'm legitimately shocked that my brain's working as well as it is for the amount of mimosas I had over the past 48 hours, because I basically replaced all of the water in my body with some type of champagne or Prosecco. So I'm going pretty good here. Lack of sleep isn't helping, but I only need to make it through tomorrow.
That's true. That's all we have to do, really.
Indiana Pacers. So Miles Turner is questionable here. It's the only injury news that we're really paying attention to. But if Miles Turner happens to be out, Thomas Bryant is the flat 3K and will be like 50% owned. So right now, the Pacers are getting no love. Highest owned guy is Turner at 7%. TJ McConnell got to 11 on FanDuel, but basically everybody's like 2 or 3. Clearly a tough matchup, pace down spot, great defense for the Thunder. I don't have anybody that stands out for the Pacers if Turner is in. Do you?
No, nobody here looks that good. I mean, I usually don't like these guys very much. Like their usage rates are some of the worst in the league, like for an entire team, where nobody above 23% besides TJ McConnell. The price tags are getting better for Halliburton and Siakam, where I can start to think about getting there a little bit more. But Halliburton, I'm just always low on when he's over 8K. I don't see that being different today. But I agree with you that if you get Turner out, like clearly Thomas Bryant would be one of the key plays of the slate, and you probably want to jam him in as much as humanly possible.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of went over it a little bit on the strategy show earlier today, but let's just say, for example, Turner happens to be out. Thomas Bryant's a fantasy point per minute guy. Even if you don't want to go with a crazy projection and you just want to think like, okay, 24 minutes, they fill the rest of it small with Siakam and Obi Toppin, however they want to handle that. 24 minutes of Thomas Bryant at the flat 3K is like 24 fantasy points. That's 8x his salary just as a baseline projection. And he could play upwards of 30 conceivably in this matchup if it's going well, if they need that sort of rim protection. But even in 24 minutes, he's the number one value play on the slate if it happens. So massive piece of news here. I'm guessing we get that sort of information on Live Before Lock. You really don't want to miss that, because that changes the entire scope of the slate. To be able to get a 3K guy into your lineups, he's going to be 40+% owned. It's going to completely change the way that you can get to Shea, the way you could potentially get to Giannis later on. Pay up options become a lot easier to grab if you need them. But if Turner happens to be out, obviously we're talking about Bryant here. Do you think that leads us to anybody else? Does that make Obi Toppin a little bit more appealing to you at 4,600? He's power forward center eligible. I'm not really sure who else would be interesting. Like potentially Jarris Walker gets some more minutes if they're sliding guys to the right a bit. They're already out Wiseman. They're already out. Who the hell else got hurt?
Moses Brown.
Isaiah Jackson. Yeah. So Toppin, does he become a thing?
I think that's an interesting call out. The price tag's a little bit tough to love, but I do think with him, okay-ish play right now, 4.5x value, give him a few more minutes to look a little bit better. And he also probably be a direct threat to be the one who takes minutes away from Thomas Bryant if that were to open up. So yeah, I'm with you on that conceptually. I think that he'd look like a better play, would not be as much of an obvious, you got to get there like crazy play like Thomas Bryant would be, but I think he'd be the leverage against it. So yeah, Toppin, I don't know who else even would play center at this point. Like Jarris Walker, they just never seem to want to do that with him, even though I think he could finesse it a little bit. So yeah, I'm with you. I think that Toppin would be the beneficiary, and that's probably about it besides Thomas Bryant, if Turner were out, of course.
The only other option is James Johnson, and I don't think that's going to get a lot of run. I mean, they basically never play that dude. After that, it's Walker and Toppin, and then you're shit out of luck for anybody with that sort of size. So I think Toppin then becomes a guy you can click on, but nothing too crazy. Bryant becomes a huge priority, assuming he starts. But even if he doesn't, he's going to be an okay value either way. Interesting first game. You know what's not interesting? The second game. But unfortunately, there's a lot of ownership coming into it. Miami Heat, 1-point dogs in Orlando, 208 total. Second lowest total on the slate. Second lowest pace on the slate. This game is 34 points off of the highest total game. And they are basically 10 possessions short of the fastest game here. Unfortunately, though, we got to play a bunch of this stuff. And we might end up playing even more of it by the time we're all said and done here. So Miami, no Jimmy Butler. Terry Rozier is questionable. Jovic available, Larson available. Drew Smith obviously out now for the rest of the year. The Rozier news is going to matter, but we're already getting 40% ownership to Jaime Jaquez, 10 to Tyler Hero, single digits to everybody else. But we should probably start here with Jaquez. I'm not confident that he's going to get a boatload of minutes, but he probably can. If Rozier ends up out, it'll look a little bit better. But 42% ownership feels a little high.
So I would go the other way. If he's going to get the 27.9 win projection that Stokastic has, I think he's one of the only good value plays on the slate that we know right now with all the Q-Tag guys we have. So I am pro Jaquez here. Was actually having a debate with Doug, who's in the Stokastic chat right now as well, on my Splash Play stream, and he was like, Jaquez sucks, whatever. But the reality is you're losing Jimmy Butler if you're going to open up this many minutes, and you have Drew Smith out as well. Like, we're starting to get a little bit lower on options. There's enough guys projected to play some minutes. Pele Larson being back in would take a little bit away as well from just the general wing minutes. You can give more to Alec Burks, give more to Highsmith, whatever. There are ways they can move away from Jaquez, but I don't know. Like, if you're at this impasse with Butler, like the guy who's the most Butler-like is Jaquez, being able to soak up some usage, set up some plays, probably due to shoot better, even though Josh and I have talked about here, like Jaquez, awful shooter so far this year with 23.4% true shooting, 23.4% shooting from three, and I think 50% shooting for true shooting. So like just a player that's not doing well, but probably due for positive regression. So yeah, I have double the field on Jaquez right now. I'm willing to move away from it if you give me a good case, Josh. But like I think the projection that Stokastic's given him in minutes wise is like one of the best on the slate.
Yeah, I gave him 27 minutes, small forward, power forward, 4,100. But like, it's just when I look at everybody else that it kind of just doesn't make a ton of sense. Like, is he 42-5 on Duncan Robinson today? Duncan Robinson, $200 more expensive. Doesn't have the MPE, but like, that's a pretty sizable gap in ownership for a guy that's been absolute dog shit, and they don't seem to really love playing him all that much. Larson's back now. He's small forward only, flat 3K, completely unowned. Could he just be a guy that plays a lot more minutes than we expect? We saw Alec Burks get 24 minutes with Rozier out. Does he just continue to get a couple extra minutes in lieu of, Jaquez being like a guy? I'm very nervous about that ownership. It might not matter. We might get enough news here that everything redistributes and that 42 becomes like 33 and it doesn't look as crazy on the surface. And then you get a little bit more of these Miami guys. It's just the game environment's crazy to me. He just feels a hair over owned for what we have. But I'm not sure. Like, he's the best play to me from Miami. I don't think that it's wrong or anything. It just seems extreme.
Yeah, look, I agree. It's extreme. He's also been a good producer overall with Jimmy Butler off the court. I mean, averaging 0.92 fantasy points per minute. He's still even, for as shit as he's been, he's averaging 0.88 on the year with everybody, normal runs. So like I think the line of shit, like he might be a shit real life player, but I think he's like a decent fantasy player. And there's just so much left behind with Jimmy Butler. If you want to make the case that like, hey, go to Duncan Robinson more, like I think Josh is making, split it up, go with some other guys, but like, you take Butler and Drew Smith out, which two guys have been getting meaningful minutes for the team that, Jaquez can theoretically fill in. And I think they still like, maybe it's a little bit of sunk cost fallacy, I guess, if they don't like Jaquez, but I would think you still want to invest in the guy you took with decent draft capital at this point, like give him some shots still.
I'm with you there. What else do you want to do here with Miami? Are you getting to anybody?
Tyler Hero, I'd like a good amount, getting him 28% compared to the field's 10. The price tag's tough for him at 7,900. I get that part of it, but he's a guy that's also been producing incredibly well without Jimmy Butler, over 1.2 fantasy points per minute, 28% usage, 27% assist rate. We talked about 900 and change possessions this year, so a good sample size of that as well. He's good enough, and I think people are going to be afraid of the matchup against Orlando. I know from seeing the chat, seeing social media today, people don't like going against Orlando, but like Hero can get enough usage here to go off. He certainly has beaten tougher matchups in the past. He's also failed, so I get that. But like feels a little bit light on Hero. Earlier in the day, looked much worse where he was under 5% owned. 10%, I think you got to at least be with the field on Hero. I feel less the same way about Bam Adebayo, but Hero I like a lot.
Hero would be my number 2 guy here. If Rozier is in, I'm at least a little bit interested. 4,900 point guard, shooting guard eligibility. Got 33 and 34 minutes in 2 of the last 5. So could be interesting. I'd certainly be pretty interested in Terry Rozier if he happens to be in and continues to be like 6% owned compared to Jaquez being north of 40. It's mostly just a comparison point to me. I think we could find some other versions of it. But if Rozier ends up out, I don't think Jaquez's minutes are going anywhere, and then you feel a lot better about it. Great flexibility too. Orlando. This team is snake bit. Now, obviously, they're missing the 3 guys that have been done for a while. Gary Harris, once again, questionable earlier in the day, out now. We've got Trevelyan Queen as a starter last time out. He's projected for 25% ownership. Tristan Da Silva is at 20. KCP is at 10. Jalen Suggs is at 10. I mean, even just like 42-19 on Da Silva seems kind of extreme to me, given what those 2 guys sort of are at this point. But the guy that I want the most here coming out of Orlando is Trevelyan Queen, 3,600, shooting guard only. He's 25% owned. And by all accounts, should maintain that spot in the starting lineup. They picked up 2 really nice wins in the 2 games that he's been playing a bunch, closed out the first of those, playing like the final 18 minutes in that comeback win. Picked up the win as a starter against Boston. So Queen's the guy that I want here at 3,600.
Yeah, Queen looks good. Field's going to be about 26% on him. I'm getting 10% more than that, which feels okay. When you get the Gary Harris minutes out, it just looks a little bit better than I think it did a little bit earlier today, with Harris resumed to play about 10 minutes or so. So getting that for Queen, I'm okay with it. He's been shooting, I would say, unsustainably well to start the year, 74% true shooting, 100% from free throw. Those come down a little bit. Maybe the projection's a little bit inflated as it is. But, I think playing the minutes, like Josh mentioned, being a part of a rotation that's working pretty well, you're probably going to see the minutes, but I would question his upside a little bit. And I would question too, that maybe there's other values that could end up later if you get the Q tags to break the right way. So that'd be my concerns for Queen, but I agree. He's like the must-have play here. I've got him again, over 30 at 35%, nobody else above 10 on the team.
Yeah. I went 28 minutes for him today, got 34 last time out, got the full normal starter run, played 17 in the first half, got the closing run again. Feels like a situation where if this game is close, he's just going to be out there unless it's going extra special bad for him. He feels pretty safe to me. I'm surprised that he's not more owned than he is. I find him pretty easy to get to. What do you want to do here with Da Silva? I assume you don't have a ton given your amount of Jaquez.
No, I'm low on Da Silva, getting 9% compared to the field's 19. I mean, I'm getting under 10% on KCP, under 10% on Da Silva, 10% flat on Batadze, 10% flat on Suggs. Like, none of these guys stand out to me as particularly uniquely good plays relative to the matchup, the low total and all of that. But I think they work in tournament lineups. The issue I have is like Queen, I think, is a good play no matter what you're doing. I think the rest of these guys, to me, like you get them kind of mixed in, they feel right, but they're not priorities. So to me, Queen's a priority. Everybody else, whatever. And that includes Da Silva, who I think has just never been a guy that's wowed me so far.
Well, we did get news right now that Miles Turner is in. We also have the starting lineup for the Magic: Suggs, Caldwell Pope, Queen, Da Silva, Batadze. So Queen maintaining his spot in the starting lineup. We are not getting the Thomas Bryant minutes, but the fact that Queen is now starting, he's the dude. I like him more than I like Jaquez at this particular moment. That might change if Rozier ends up out.
Yeah, I would favor Jaquez, but I think with your case you made, I think you made a very compelling argument. That's better than the one I made for Jaquez.
It's not that I don't like Jaquez either, but I'm intrigued by that ownership. Those guys could end up at 31 and 36 shortly, and it's not going to look as extreme. But with Queen being below 30 and Jaquez being above 40, like visually, it stands out to me.
You know, it would put me over the top if he were shooting guard small forward. I think that would make it.
Yeah, he'd be 50% owned at that point. Yeah. So that flexibility would be incredible. Not the best per minute guy in the world. Like he's worse than Jaquez on a per minute rate, but I think that he has a much higher minute ceiling and a much more advantageous price. That'll be interesting. I'm going to keep my eye on that one. And you were a little bit down on KCP. I kind of like him at 4,300, shooting guard, small forward, 12% owned. I actually had him 15% optimal before we got started. So maybe a hair under owned to me.
You don't think that he eats from the same plate as Queen does, kind of? I mean, the price tags maybe make it not matter, but.
Yeah, yes, but I don't think it matters as much with their price. Like Queen isn't a 30. Let's just say we thought that he was going to start for the next 2 weeks until somebody was back. He's never going to be 3,600. He's going to be somewhere in the mid fours. KCP just has that good positional flexibility that I think is getting a little underrepresented here. The real problem for this game is just simply that it's so slow, so defensive oriented, not a lot of offensive talent. Those are the pieces that I think are really holding these guys back because they're missing 4.5 possessions and 20 real points just from the game we talked about. All right, 2 down, couple more to go. Hit that like button if you haven't done it yet. That helps us out a ton. Schedule's very easy. NBA Live Before Lock is coming up next. They're going to take you from 6 to 7. You are not going to want to miss any of that. I think we're going to have a lot of news coming in from that 6:30 to 7 window. And then just before lock, as we get closer to Chicago and Atlanta, that Chicago news is hanging out there. And then there's football tonight, everybody. Thursday night football, NFL Live Before Lock starting up at 7:15, taking you all the way to kickoff. So lots of content left to go, folks. We're not going anywhere anytime soon. We are going to the Charlotte Hornets. 4.5-point favorites in Washington, 228 total. Hornets have a perpetual Q tag on Brandon Miller. We haven't seen him in a bit. Everybody else that's normally available is, but we are getting a healthy amount of ownership into LaMelo Ball right now. 10K on DraftKings, 10-1 on FanDuel. He's 30% owned on DraftKings, close to 25 on FanDuel. No one else is getting any ownership on DraftKings from Charlotte. However, if Brandon Miller happens to play, for some strange reason, he's 8,800 on DraftKings and 7K on FanDuel, a gap of $1,800. Brandon Miller is 20% owned on the FanDuel side, unowned on DraftKings. How are you feeling about this ownership coming into LaMelo Ball? Feels a hair high.
Yeah, I'm not on it. I have about a third of the ownership getting 11% compared to the field's 36. I'm okay with LaMelo Ball. Like, I get it. Pace up spot, soft defense. People look like the DVP thing on DraftKings. They'll go, whoa, he's going to crush. But it's like, it's a high price point for him. And if you get Miller back in, you're talking about a guy who's a hair under a 30% usage rate, averaging 28% on the year. Does include a good, 7 games without LaMelo. So probably a little bit elevated at that mark, but still, you're taking a good amount of shots away. If you get LaMelo just putting all the usage up, like he's at a 40% usage rate generally on the year. If you get Brandon Miller out, he could push closer to 50, and he has in some spots. I would get that. I would get super chalk LaMelo then. As it is right now, I think people are playing kind of a matchup more than they are, a conceptual matchup than they are a price point and a projection. And the projection looks okay. Like, don't get me wrong, but I just don't think he's like this lock button borderline play like you're getting on the lineup so far.
Is he that much better than Shea?
I don't think so. I agree with you. Yeah.
Like, Shea's $300 more expensive, exact same positionality. They're pretty much the same per minute guys. I think we should expect more minutes from Shea. Not that LaMelo can't get those minutes, but I personally think that Shea is probably more likely to play more than LaMelo Ball. One of these guys is 33% owned, the other is 14. I'm interested in just turning, again, not that LaMelo doesn't look good, but I'm interested in turning some of those excess shares just into Shea Gilgeous-Alexander.
Yeah, I think that's smart. I mean, look, it's a lot of ownership for LaMelo. If he were this owned and Brandon Miller were out, it'd be like perfect. Like, actually a little bit low. He should be 50% probably. Miller in, I think you're losing a little bit, at least a little bit there, if not a lot, potentially, to Miller being back in.
Yeah, if Brandon Miller ends up out, then LaMelo's going to look a little bit better. There's just so much more usage to go around. The ball's in his hands 24/7 at that point. So then I get it. But as it currently stands, a little high. I definitely don't want anybody else from Charlotte, though. They look awful.
Mark Williams is okay if you give him the rates he has this year. Like, he's been a monster. He's averaging 1.5 fantasy points per minute, 22% or 24% usage, 22% rebound rate, 23% assist rate. I don't think that holds, but he's been fantastic. The issue, like Josh will always point out, the minutes ceiling is not there at all. But on a slate where you're not getting a ton of great values right now, I mean, we just had to debate Jaime Jaquez and Traveling Queen a little bit for more than I think you probably want to. I think Williams under 5K stands out a little bit on that front. He could put up enough of a ceiling, but you are not getting enough minutes there, so you got to really thread a tight needle. But he's better than 3% ownership, I think.
Yeah, we just got to find him. We got to see if he can actually play more than 19 minutes.
Yeah,
that's really the only issue. At some point in time, maybe that goes up and you want to be early to it, which makes some sense. And, a matchup against the Wizards is certainly going to make it feel a little bit better, but I don't know when they're going to start stretching that dude out. Oh, I don't want to talk about this team. And honestly, we really can't Well, I mean, we can. They're all available. Bub Carrington's available. Bilal Coulibaly is available. Sarr is available. This was looking like it could have been an absolute disaster. It is a huge pace down spot for the Wizards. I have them losing 3.4 possessions below their average here. We are getting some ownership in. Sarr is 30% owned. Brogdon is 15% owned. Jordan Poole is basically right at 10. Nobody else is really getting any love. I really like Jordan Poole at 7,700 here. MPE, he's playing bigger minutes lately than he had been all year. He certainly doesn't lack for shot attempts, and he's been shooting the shit out of the ball. He's shooting 41% from three. The true shooting's great. He's not the guy that we remember from last year. He's the guy that was good on Golden State again. It just so happens the Wizards suck. So I actually think Jordan Poole is quite a bit under-owned today. We can get to the rest of those guys in a bit. How do you feel about Poole?
I like that as a call. I got him 5%, so a little bit lower than the field, though I didn't juke the projections to affect with Kuzma out, which I think you could do a little bit to give Poole that boost, and he'd probably come up a little bit more for me. So I might do that after the show, I think, now that you pointed that out. But I'm okay with Poole. Yeah, like, honestly, he even played okay versus the Thunder recently, which I would say was a bit of a surprise. He's doing well this year. He does look like Golden State Poole a little bit more, less of just joking around, screwing around, messing up everything over and over again. So I don't mind that as a call out here. I think the ownership being low on him, like that price tag's a little bit tough. Would prefer to find the extra 200 and get to Hero. But I think, look, if you don't like Hero as much as I do, I think Poole, pretty viable pivot and the kind of term to play you want under 10% owned.
Not to mention, like, while it is a slower matchup, I'll take a matchup against Charlotte all day. Like, they stink. It's not like I'm worried about their defensive abilities. I mean, you got your Josh Greens and your Cody Martins out there that can do some things, but they're not exactly like lockdown guys. So give me Poole getting up boatloads of shots and trying to shoot them into this game. What do you want to do with the guy that's getting the ownership, though? 5,400 power forward center eligibility for Alex Sarr.
So I'm getting him in about a quarter of my lineups, a little bit less than the field. I'm never the biggest Alex Sarr guy, but I think he has at least stabilized somewhat interesting, just under 1 fantasy point minute on the year, 20% usage, 12% rebound rate, doing a little bit of everything there. In particular, the rebounds are where you wanted to see it. Power forward center also helps out a little bit to get him in more lineups. I think it's a little bit tough to fill out power forward today. Part of my Jaime Jaquez conundrum as well. So I don't mind Sarr, never a play I'm going to go to my way for. I do have him a little bit lower projected than Stokastic does at that 30.3 projection, but it's a nice projection from Stokastic for him, and I think he's an okay play. I don't have an issue with him being in a quarter of my lineups, but if he were not in those lineups and I had somebody else, I don't think I'd go, let me fix this and get to Sarr. I don't think I feel that way about him.
He makes a bunch of sense to me just because of that power forward eligibility. He's awful in real life. Like, one of the worst players in basketball, has no offensive ability whatsoever. Yet, it's DFS. Should play 30 minutes, 5,400. Charlotte Hornets, willing to take my chances. How do you feel about Brogdon getting 15% ownership? Because that feels a hair high.
You're getting half of that. I think he's sort of your pull against Jordan Poole. I think part of why I've had Poole a little bit lower projected is just Brogdon's historical data and how much, even this year, still getting up to 23% usage, 20% assist rate, and 1 fantasy point per minute. I get being okay with him here at that price tag, the $5,300 price tag. I think not the worst one in the world for him. Certainly could be a little bit cheaper if you really wanted to get there a ton. So I get what people are getting there, given the matchup and the price tag, but yeah, projection wise, I don't have him that great. Still under a 5x value. I can take him, but I don't really need him too.
Pele Larson now questionable for the Miami Heat today. That's going to make Jaime Jaquez look a hair better.
Get them all out. Put them all on the sidelines. Jaquez will get there.
Dude's going to end up 60% owned by the time we get done with the show.
Deservedly so.
All right, this one's going to be pretty tough to talk about right now. Chicago Bulls are 6.5 point dogs in Atlanta, 242 total. I will say that with everybody in this entire game, all the questionable dudes, I do have the line matching where it's at, but this could get chopped up in a bunch of different ways and still keep us where we are. This is the fastest pace game on the slate. 103.7 is where I have it. 242.5 total is also the highest total, but we have a questionable tag on Ayo Dosunmu, Josh Giddey, and Buzelis. We're only getting 10% ownership to Kobe White and Zach LaVine right now. Those questionable tags are going to change everything. I guess if everybody's in, how are you feeling about LaVine and White or anybody else?
Not very good. Getting half of both guys, less than that of Kobe White. Was actually getting Kobe White before the latest projection update. Now I'm not there as much. I think I'm putting a little bit more towards Queen would be my guess. Kobe White, I think an okay play would benefit if we didn't get the news about Giddey and Dosunmu and you had to make that decision. He would obviously look like a much better play if you get one of those guys out, let alone both of them. So I don't mind the concept of Kobe White, but I think these guys are all kind of appropriately priced, maybe a little bit more ceiling to go on LaVine. I don't know. I'm just never big on the Bulls. I feel like they split things up well enough. You have a pretty deep rotation. If you get guys out, they start to look better to me. But if you're assuming they're all in, I think they all just kind of look like mediocre plays at best.
Yeah, nobody stands out. But at the same time, if they're all out, like who the hell knows what we're getting to from the Bulls at that point? It's just really difficult to break down. It's just pace up, no real defense. I mean, Atlanta's defense isn't bad, but obviously Tyson Daniels is exceptional, but not like a defense you're super worried about. Huge total in this one. I want to get pieces from Chicago, but until we know what those Q tags become, it's really hard to break down. The fact that this game starts at 7:30 is incredibly annoying, but there's still 3 more games at 8 o'clock. So late swaps will be plentiful if you need them. But for right now, there's too many different permutations to dig in. Atlanta has the opportunity to get really crazy too. Q-tag Trae Young, Q-tag Bogdanovich. Trae is 25% owned. Jalen Johnson's close to 20. Capella is 30. Bogdan is 10. I love Trae here today. I think he looks absolutely fantastic if he's playing at 9,200. I like him a lot better than some of the other guards that were getting some ownership earlier. What do you want to do here with Trae if he's playing? Because this is a great spot.
I'm not fading Trae fully, but I am getting less in the field, 27%. I agree it's a good spot. His price tag coming down a little bit too. Like I kind of thought I would get more, but I'm above the field on Jalen Johnson. I think overall, with my projections, I think I was having a tough time filling power forward. So kind of favoring those guys a little bit more generally. Whereas at point guard, you have so many options to go to. And I think Trae is one of these good ones, but like I can get less of him. I can get less of LaMelo and still get enough shares there to feel like I'm getting different looks than other point guards in. So that's sort of what my feel is for it. But I think Trae Young and Jalen Johnson have been kind of the same play this entire year. So their price points starting to flatten out is probably a logical thing. And it should be more beneficial for Trae because Jalen Johnson's moved up about 1K in salary over the course of the last month or so. So I like Jalen Johnson, but I do think we're now reaching a point where that price tag you're paying for all the previous production. For Trae Young, buying low here, I get it. But like, it's a lot of chalk ownership on the team. Like even Capella's come down a little bit. Capella was at 40% before. Now is at 30. I'm getting half of that. I'm not crazy about the Hawks here. It's a high total, but like you have a full rotation for the most part if everybody's in.
30% ownership for Capella seems awfully high here today, but I also don't think it's all that crazy. I don't know what to do there.
You have Nance there. Like Nance really is, I don't know, a threat to take minutes more than I would have thought for a guy who wasn't in the rotation, at least based on what we've seen so far.
Yeah, like I went 25 to Capella, 21 to Nance. Capella's a great per minute dude. I got him at 1.2 here. He's always live, I think, to play like 28 minutes if it's going well and just play like a normal starter. It just doesn't feel like they ever really want to do that until it's just a random game you don't expect. But on a point per dollar basis, I mean, 5,200 is just simply not enough for Capella in this matchup against Chicago. I mean, most of Atlanta looks decent. There's not a single guy in their legitimate 20-minute plus rotation that I wouldn't want to have in a lineup today against Chicago.
Yeah, I want to get taste of these guys. I don't want them to be my entire night. I think it's how like the ownership is kind of pushing it where you're almost getting a Hawk in every lineup. I don't quite feel that strongly about them.
Danny, come back in 5 minutes when you're a different person, I hope. Anything else for the Atlanta Hawks?
No, I think the Capella thing is it. I would say with that Capella ownership, wouldn't be the craziest thing to just take a shot at Larry Nance, even if the projection's not that good, just knowing that you're going to directly pull away from the Capella ownership if Nance does start playing well and get some run. But yeah, like 15% Capella, 15% Jalen Johnson, a little bit more than that, 15% Trae. Like I'm getting some of these guys, but it's not. I think the field's a little bit high on him, but that's me.
Danny had that second account ready. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that's not the first time that's happened to you, brother. I'm going to assume that most YouTube chats immediately see you and think this is going to go a lot better for everybody involved if you're just simply a mute.
It's too many chat.
I tried. You want advice. I could understand. You might be the most high level needing advice of anybody that's ever been in here. So, and it's a high bar. Here's some advice. The promo code CELEBRATE can get you the NFL Sims Max package for $179. That'll be better than anything that you try to do on your own. Projections, ownership, boom bust, all of our Sims, premium Discord. It's 179 bones, and you get it all the way through the rest of the NFL season to the Super Bowl. So we're talking massive showdowns throughout the playoffs, all of the fun just weekend slates that exist during the playoffs. Still have one more week to go. Lots going on still in the NFL. And you get it for $179. It's the rest of December, all of January, and that first stretch of February. So if you guys want to get in, you want to play a little NFL DFS, seems pretty easy. You can grab everything that we possibly have at Stokastic by using the promo code CELEBRATE or by clicking the link in the description. Game 5. Toronto Raptors, 11.5-point dogs in Memphis, 240 total. Second highest total, basically in line with Chicago and Atlanta. Second highest pace, basically in line with Chicago and Atlanta. Toronto's got a Q tag on Jacoby Walter and a Q tag on Jamal Shed. Only getting ownership, though, on the DraftKings side to Scotty Barnes, who's right around 15%. But I would argue that RJ Barrett looks a little underowned here. Tough matchup. I think Grady Dick could probably use a little bit more ownership here. I kind of like Toronto as a sneaky GPP team, but they are running into a team that's really unfun to play in Memphis.
Yeah, I mean, Memphis obviously defensively can do a lot of things. Big pace up spot theoretically. I don't know how much Josh has it for, but theoretically, Memphis, one of the higher pace teams in the league, so I could see that. I'm low on Scotty Barnes, though, here. I think when you have Barrett and Barnes in, that sort of does kind of take away from some of the upside. Well, maybe not the upside, but like the median projection for me, like I have these guys pretty flat at about 43 fantasy points each. Granted, RJ Barrett's rates probably could be knocked down a little bit because of Barnes being in. Barnes coming off the ankles, not really the same Barnes yet. I imagine he'll get there at some point, but I don't mind Barnes, but again, 16% feels a little bit heavy to me. I'm closer to 7.5. Getting RJ Barrett about 5, getting Chris Boucher 5 is about it for me. I'm with you. The matchup seems okay, but like Toronto is not in the same class as Memphis. The total does kind of reflect that here with it being an 11.5-point spread. So, yeah, you make the case for Barnes and Barrett, I think, but I'm not there today. And I usually have these guys overprojected, so I'm kind of surprised I'm not there.
Yeah, I don't want it to seem like I like it because this is a really bad spot for everybody on Toronto, but like I don't think 35 plus fantasy points out of Grady Dick if Toronto happens to be in this game is crazy for a shooting guard. I'm not as excited about the like poor per minute dudes like Akbaji or Jacoby Walter if he happens to be in, or like Jamison Battle, that kind of stuff. Olynyk and Boucher seem pretty tough to get to, but I don't know. But Barrett and Dick seem a little light in the Dick department today.
Just let that one sit in the air for a minute.
Yeah. Gotta let it breathe.
Just like Danny in the chat. Gotta let it breathe.
Memphis is as full strength as they can be right now. Obviously, they're still without Jay Huff, Marcus Smart, and Vince Williams, but that doesn't stop them. They still have 11 dudes. Lots of ownership, though, coming into Memphis in this spot. Not surprising. Fast-paced game, big total. 15 to Ja, 15 to Triple J, 10 to Bane, 20 to Edie, 10 to Wells, 20 to Aldama. Some of that stands out to me as not necessarily what I'm really looking for here. What do you like the most here from Memphis? Because they're pretty popular.
I like Aldama. Again, you need power forwards on the slate. You need some forward optionality. He looks okay to me at the decent projection, about a 25 minute projection from Stokastic, which is not great. As Josh always points out for Memphis, the fact nobody here gets above 30 is kind of tough to really love these guys. But I think Aldama at his price tag being 5,100 power forward, which we do need on the slate a little bit more. I got him in 31% of lineups. I'm a little surprised to see all the ownership here overall. Like I like John Morant. I'm not crazy about going there. Bane's the only one not really getting known, but I'm under on all these guys. I think besides Aldama, I think Aldama just kind of need everybody else getting some John Morant, putting him in with all the point guards we talked about so far, getting some stake there, but not going crazy on it. I'm good with that. Zach Edey as a value center. I think he and Mark Williams might be similar plays more than people realize with the minutes. But I think that Edey's an okay play. No real issue with the guys here, but it's like a lot of ownership because there aren't, I guess, more obvious plays. I really don't know why there's this much ownership going to Memphis.
Well, the one guy you told me you were over the field on was the one I was going to say I hated the most. That was Santi Aldama, 5,100 power forward only. I just don't really understand why he's 20% owned.
Yeah, I mean, why is Zach Edey 20% plus owned? I mean, I guess semi-value, but you're taking up a center spot with Zach Edey?
I would. I like Edey more than I like Aldama right now. Now, Now, if Aldama is going to fall into the 31 minutes he had last time out, that's going to look great. If it's going to be the 21 or the 19 he had in 2 out of his last 5, that's going to be tricky. His range of outcomes is 20 minutes to 30 minutes, and that's a pretty wide range. I like that when he's not getting the ownership. I'm not sure I love it as much when he is. I think there are going to be different versions of him that we can find throughout this slate. But like, I think Ja's ownership looks good. I think Triple J's looks good. I'm a little lighter on Desmond Bane than what we're showing, but that's fine. Edie's getting more and more minutes, went 24, 24, 27, and then 27. So that's starting to creep up. I'm curious to see what that like ceiling ends up actually being. Maybe 27 is it. I'm not surprised to see Memphis get this ownership just because of how good this matchup is with regards to just raw points and pace, but they are a little scary to me.
Yeah, the one thing I would say for Edie that I guess I didn't think about, which, it's not a projection thing. I just kind of pulled my lineups, pulled the data and did it. With no Pirtle, Edie should be able to beast them if they want to feed him in the post and have one of those classic 1980s ball kind of games. So maybe underselling Edie, but yeah, I don't know. Like Aldama's positionality works. Price tags on Jackson and Morant aren't bad. I'm not mad at any of the plays here, but I just don't need to be, I think, as high on the field or as high as the field is on these guys.
Well, then we will go to Brooklyn and Milwaukee. This one is honestly basically impossible to talk about on the Milwaukee side, but we're going to give it our best shot either way. Only news that we're worried about for Brooklyn, Dorian Finney-Smith, Ben Simmons, both questionable, although technically Dorian Finney-Smith is in. Let's make sure that's in the updated injury report because it came out that he was playing. He's still listed as questionable on the injury report, but allegedly he's supposed to play today. We don't know the status of Ben Simmons. No one on Brooklyn got to 10% ownership on the DraftKings side, 9 to Simmons, 9 to Claxton. I don't mind getting Simmons if he's playing these 30 minutes he's been playing lately. I don't see a single priority here from Brooklyn, though, one way or the other.
Yeah, no, I think Simmons an okay play. I got him 15% compared to the field's 8 and change, which feels okay to me at his price point if he's going to play. Obviously, if he doesn't play, maybe opens up some more point guard minutes for Shake Milton. Who would be the point guard if Simmons, is it Milton playing a lot of minutes?
You're going to get a lot of Shake. You're going to get a lot more of Keon Johnson, I would guess. And then, you just patch it together.
Could he play? Is Reese Beckman available or Beekman, whatever? It's the only point guard I've seen.
He is available.
Oh, there we go. Be a big Reese Beekman day.
Yes, those days happen frequently, right?
Yeah, but I think Brooklyn honestly, Brooklyn's been one of these weird teams where you took Cam Thomas out and I was like, man, this is going to make everything look better. Schroeder looked a little bit better. Then you take Schroeder out and it's like, this team, nobody looks that good. Low total here under 100 points, which I feel like we're just not getting very often on slates. So really tough to love Brooklyn here, but Milwaukee, bunch of Q-tag guys. Maybe they hang in there somehow. Cam Johnson, I feel like is a tournament shot. Seems kind of interesting under 5% owned, but Simmons the only one I'm really getting.
Yeah, 9.5 point dogs are Brooklyn, 207 total. It is pretty awful here for the Brooklyn Nets. But that Ben Simmons news will loom large. There's a lot of minutes to go around if they need them. Somebody could look okay. What doesn't look okay? Anything on Milwaukee if everybody is in. 5% ownership to Giannis, none to Dame, 1% to Brook Lopez, and nobody else getting anything other than 0. But Q-tag Giannis, Q-tag Dame. If they're both in, I have no problem getting Giannis, especially if we have enough value that paying up is fine. I can't say that he looks amazing, but he doesn't look bad. I like him more than 5%. If one of the two happen to be out, then you're going to like the other one quite a bit, is my guess. But if they're both in, I'm not sure we're getting a lot of Milwaukee.
Yeah, I'm getting 13% and change of Giannis. I think that's okay as your big pay up option on the slate. But even that for Giannis, his projection's not quite as high as it's been lately. I'm at about 55 fantasy points. Stokastic's at 54.3. So we're not talking 60 plus here, which you'd feel a little bit better about with how Giannis has been lately in terms of his projections. But yeah, I think you need one of the guys out really to make this look good. Giannis as it is, I think a good tournament play if you get Lillard in. But if Lillard's out, he's going to be a lot chalkier and probably deserve it. Ryan Rollins back in the mix theoretically if you get Lillard out, though I guess Delon Wright could still get that work. They could move things around. But Rollins, is Rollins out of the rotation if Lillard is in? Or if Lillard is, he's probably out of the rotation entirely. But if Lillard's out, he might still be not as in the rotation as he was before, right?
I assume that he's not going to be in the rotation at all if Lillard is back.
Right.
We weren't getting DeLon Wright at all at that point. Obviously, we weren't getting Ryan Rollins at that point. I think that's just not going to be a spot that picks up any minutes. Your best case scenario is that he plays whatever Dame doesn't play. But I think he's probably just done if Dame is back.
Yeah. I mean, he has like a 1 minute projection from Stokastic right now, but
Yeah.
he would still be live, I think, potentially to get good run if Lillard's out. But honestly, with this right now, like I don't know. Maybe move down the rotation a little bit further, and he wouldn't get that great run if Lillard were out.
That is obviously going to be major news that we are going to need as this day goes on, because you guys should be well aware that Dame and Giannis will impact some things for the Milwaukee Bucks today if one of them happens to be out. Final game of the DraftKings slate is Houston and New Orleans. The Rockets are 7.5-point favorites in New Orleans, 221 total. There's a Q tag on Tari Eason. There's a Q tag on Javonte Green. Otherwise, we got everybody here. Brandon Miller game time decision. So no new news. Fantastic. 15% ownership to Van Vliet. 3 to Jabari Smith for reasons that continue to make no sense to me. 10 to Jalen Green. 40 to Amin Thompson. And another 15 to Alperen Şengün. And then we could see more ownership coming into Cam Whitmore if Tari Eason happens to be out. But we're going to need that news first. What are you doing with Amin Thompson here? Because he's shooting guard, small forward, 6K. He's a fantasy point per minute guy, and he is getting some ownership. Terry Rozier available to play.
No, poor
Kelly Larson available to play.
Nah. Well, now Jaime Haka's ownership's getting really reasonable as we go on. I think for Amin Thompson, he's one of the better plays in the slate, getting him in 40% of my lineups. As Josh mentioned, the shooting guard, small forward helps out a lot there. Obviously been adding a good amount in terms of the steal block upside that keeps him kind of having the outlier days occasionally. But he's also been shooting really well in the year, 61% true shooting. He's getting shots. He's going to at least have a pretty good shot of making them, even though the usage is not that high, under 18% usage on the year. He does a little bit of everything. I'm pretty content to get him here. I do worry a little bit that when you have a chalky Amin Thompson, I feel like he's a better play generally for tournaments when he's going to be less owned. But, I think there's a floor there. The ceiling, hopefully you hit it if you're going to play him with the field. But I think he's the best play here. And everything else, I'm kind of with the field on, getting a lot of Şengün. But Thompson's a priority. Like Thompson, I think one of the better plays in the slate, and probably, dare I say, even better than Jaime Haka's.
Yes, I would say that he's better than Jaime Haka's for sure. He has the opportunity to play a ton of minutes, especially if Eason ends up out. Only thing I'll push back on is shooting really well. I would say that he is scoring efficiently. He can't shoot worse shit, but when he gets to the rim, it goes really well for him. Anytime that it's not at the rim, it's not very good. But I don't want to quibble. He's great.
You're right. He's shooting like a big man with good true shooting is. You're right. 30% from 3 is perhaps not that good.
Yeah, you got to picture him as like a 7'2" guy in 1995. The efficiency's good though. 60% true shooting, like that works. If he's going to get to the rim as much as he can, and he can pretty much do it whenever he wants, given how athletic he is. 6 shots at the rim per 75 possessions. That's a 80th percentile rate. He gets downhill really, really well. Big fan of Amin Thompson. But yeah, I like everything in the Houston starting lineup. I wouldn't want to limit it to just Thompson. I think Jabari Smith is underowned at 5,800. Not a fantastic per minute guy, but those minutes just seem to be there now. They were jerking him around in the rotation a little bit. Pause. But for now, he just plays those minutes. And if that's the case, I kind of just think he's underrepresented for what this could be. I mean, we're talking about a guy at this point now, 35 minutes over his last 3, 36 over the last 5, 35 and a half over his last 10. This dude's just playing those minutes. He's not finding those like, oh, he played 22 minutes today type games. Like he had a lot at the early part of the season. 3% ownership for him seems light in relationship to the rest of these guys, but I just like the Houston side.
Yeah, I think Houston's got some options. Chat seems like Cam Whitmore, which I don't see quite as much, but he's been producing a lot. Just I don't think he can hold a 30% usage rate for bench minutes forever.
It all depends on the Eason news. If Tari Eason is in, then you can't be as confident in Cam Whitmore's minutes at that point, and I wouldn't want to go there. If Eason's out, then I think he's playing like 24 plus, and at that point in time, I think that's when you want to go to him. So you need that news.
I think Eason went through shoot around, but that hasn't mattered as much as it has in the past. So who knows?
On the Pels side, we did get the news earlier today that Trey Murphy is expected to play. He is still technically listed as questionable. Same for Javonte Green. Around 10% ownership to Trey Murphy, CJ McCollum, Yves Missi. I would argue that Herb Jones and DeJounte Murray look a hair under-owned for this spot, but they are running into a bit of a buzzsaw in Houston's defense.
Yeah, so I'm loading up on Pelicans here. Getting a lot of DeJounte Murray, getting 21% of him compared to the field 6. So that's where some of my point guard ownership is going. He's been playing well on the year, relatively well, compared to some point guards we're having the slate at the very least. 1.15 fantasy points per minute. Usage is there at 27% and change. Assist rate at 36%. The main thing for me, and I do keep playing Murray, and I keep hoping it's going to get better, due to shoot better at some point with 45% true shooting, 26% from 3. I would think, based on his historical rates, he's going to get there. And against Houston, if he's going to be low owned, it's a tough matchup. But if they're going to stay in this game, I think it's probably coming with Murray being at least a part of that. I'm also higher on the field on McCollum. Again, not things I did manually, just what I'm getting projection wise. I think these guys are okay. Like, they're in reasonable price tags for the most part. The total is not too crazy. Obviously, they're an underdog at home, but not a crazy big underdog. I don't mind New Orleans side of things, in particular McCollum, Murray, Trey Murphy, a little bit above the field on, a little bit under on Missy, but getting reasonable amounts of all these guys.
Yeah, I'm with you here. I think Murray is underowned. I think Herb Jones is underowned. I think that Murphy and McCollum and Missy should be guys you're getting to. It's not the most fun game environment in the world, but I'm right there with you on that Murray take.
Thank God.
We had to get there eventually,
Yeah. Law of averages.
Yeah. The only thing better than that take is the gift EV promo for Odd Shopper in the portfolio EV tool. Normally 100 bones for a month. Now you can use this promo code and get it for $49.99, half price for the next month if you use this promo code. And this deal ends today. So if you don't take advantage now, we're back to full price tomorrow. If you have any curiosity of what this tool can do, you got to find somebody on the Odd Shopper side posting this stuff to Twitter. Whether you go and look at Greg Ehrenberg's bankroll challenge, who turned $100 from the start of the NBA season. I think he's north of 700 now. Don't totally quote me on that, but regardless of it's north of 6 or north of 7, he's smashing over like 50 something days. We're not limited there. Everybody else that's putting out stuff via the Odd Shopper team onto Twitter is showing you a different version of what you can get out of this tool. And all of them look fantastic. And we have all of the historical recommendations over the past 2 years in Odd Shopper. So you could check it for yourself. Find the niche you're looking for, set up notifications for it, and it'll just pop up on your phone that you've got a bet available. 1 or 2 clicks on your phone, and you're immediately at your sportsbook placing that wager. And it all works for pick'em sites as well. So come on in, guys. Half off ends today. Final 2 games. FanDuel only. Utah Jazz, 3-point dogs in Portland, 225 total. For the Jazz, we got a little bit of ownership in here today. Just so happens that they had some Q tags. John Collins was questionable. Keontae George was questionable. They both ended up out. And then, for a little cherry on top, Jordan Clarkson also ended up out. So now, we have 20% ownership to Lauri Markkanen, 25 to Walker Kessler, 15 to Micah Potter, 15 to Svi Mikhailiuk, and a whopping 65 to Colin Sexton, 5,900 point guard, shooting guard eligible. He looks amazing. I'm not surprised to see that. Markkanen looks really good. I'm not as excited about a 7K Walker Kessler there, though, at 25% ownership.
Giving up the center spot to Kessler on FanDuel feels a little bit tough. I do think it projects well. He's been a decent play when Collins isn't out there, the better rebound rate and all that stuff. So I don't mind Kessler. I agree on FanDuel. The Sexton ownership feels right. He's basically the only ball-dominant guard they have now. Micah Potter on DraftKings the other day, swapped to him when he was 3K minimum and got the random start. Was really impressed by him in that game. Does a little bit of everything. Almost put up a double-double. Don't expect it to happen always. He's kind of just a guy, but been an aggressive rebounder, maybe not a high usage guy, but does seem to have some decent ball awareness, so I could take that shot. The Jazz, I wish were on the DraftKings slate. They have a lot of fun plays here you can go to, but clearly Sexton on FanDuel priority. I agree with Josh that Kessler on FanDuel feels a little bit tough. Markkanen, though, I think Kessler even, you could still be with the field on it. I think they're all really solid plays. Just too much to go around here against a Portland team that sucks.
Yeah, Colin Sexton, 5,900, given everybody that's out, is wildly underpriced for the role that he is going to have here. Not to mention, great matchup here against the Portland Trailblazers. Speaking of Portland, Q-Tag Delano Banton, Q-Tag Time Lord. No real ownership, though. 10% to Jeremy Grant, 6 or less to everybody else. I don't have anybody standing out here for Portland. To me, the Utah side looks clearly a lot better. You want to get to any of those 30-minute guys for Portland, I understand it, but I'm all right.
I could see a shot at Shaedon Sharpe, but even that's not really, that's just me saying something. It's really nothing here. I agree.
That was simple. And we close it out with Detroit and Sacramento. Q-tag beef stew. Q-tag Ron Holland. Q-tag DeMontis Sabonis, who also did not go through shoot around. There's no ownership coming into Detroit right now. I can't imagine the Stewart or Holland news will really change that. I would argue that Cade is probably a hair under-owned here. Duran is certainly worth a roll of the dice at 2% ownership if the minutes can if he stays out of foul trouble. And he might get a date with not DeMontis Sabonis, which would probably help. But I don't see much on Detroit that I'm really clamoring to get to.
Beasley, I can live with on most slates just because of the shooting upside being there. The fact he's gunning threes at one of the highest clips in the league. But obviously that matters more, some other slates, other sites. Do you think for Beasley, that's it for me? Cade Cunningham, I'm with you. I think he'd be in that kind of morass of point guards. He wouldn't project too much worse than SGA, LaMelo, and those guys. So, I think there's okay plays here, but nothing that feels like a must-have.
Brandon Miller in.
Ooh, all right. So, that's a lot of LaMelo ownership if Miller's in.
Per Rod Boone.
Okay.
Yeah. Shout out Rod Boone. Big fan.
I like Rod Beard, who we did a stream. Were you on that with me where we had him with Alex once? We did it was the only beat reporter review I think we did. Yeah.
I produced it.
Oh, okay. That was it. Yeah. Yeah. That was one. He was a nice guy. It's interesting to talk to the beat guys and, especially one like him who pays attention. But that's my favorite. That's my favorite Rod, Josh.
Yeah, I'm sure you got a lot of them. Yeah, that was weird. We got him because Alex used to do academic decathlons or something, and they somehow knew each other, right?
Rod Beard, yeah.
Is that what it was? Yeah. I forgot. That's old school Stokastic. I mean, that's old school Osimo. There's probably not a lot of people that are in chat right now that even remember that show existed.
Nor should they. I don't think we made a lot of hay with it, but it was interesting content piece if nothing else.
What was the Playline? Do you remember that?
The
site?
The site? Yeah.
Yeah. There was a brief window in time when we first came on where we thought we were going to get Michael Bisping to do a show. And I was just like, I'm 100% in. But it ultimately obviously fell apart and we did not get Michael Bisping. But I remember having the conversation Alex can't talk to Michael Bisping. He doesn't know anything about MMA. This was 6 years ago or whatever. And I was just like, yes, I will have that conversation. This will be fun.
You and Bisping would hit it off, I think. Two similar guys, just a couple bruisers, a couple of British bruisers.
Yeah, he and I, very similar mindsets in life with the working hard and besting yourselves and becoming a champion in life. Yes, I have a lot of the same things that Michael Bisping likes to do. I got two eyes, so you might be a little jealous of that. What are you going to do? So yeah, no DeMontis Sabonis potentially today. And that will open up a lot of weird value that you would like to get to swap to if you get that news fast enough, whether that's Trey Lyles or one of the other 6 centers that back up Sabonis, whether that's Len or one of the Joneses. I don't remember which one's which at this point. 10% ownership to Fox, 15 to Monk, around 10 to DeRozan. Not much coming into Keegan Murray. Obviously, the Sabonis news is going to have a weird trickle down where usage shows up for everybody and we get these value centers. Do you like anything specific for the Kings?
Sabonis is in. I think he's an interesting play to go to today on FanDuel. I think just getting that a little bit less ownership on him. And I think he projects pretty well relative to that. So I can take that shot. Fox can always take the shot on the ownership, have him really well projected. If you're on the DK late slate, I think the price tag there a little bit too light for him at 8,500. So it would look pretty good. Keegan Murray, I'm okay with. I feel like the one time Keegan Murray's hit this year is one time we agreed on him, and he absolutely smashed from the chat. I was like, he's awful, and of course he positively regressed for one day. Murray, I'm okay with. Things would look a lot better if Sabonis were out, but if he's in, I think Sabonis is a good play. Fox still a good play. DeRozan, Murray, second tier.
Josh Giddey out. Ayo Dosunmu out. I'm going to wait for the third one, and then we're going to head on over to Live Before Lock. So while these are coming in, Spags, tell the people where to find you.
You can check me out at Splash Play NBA. I do streams Monday to Friday at 4 p.m. right before this one starts. Talking about my projections, comparing them to Stokastic stuff, running sims, checking prop markets and all that. And go check it out at Splash Play NBA and show some love there. Trying to pass a subscriber milestone, Josh. We get monetized. That's the dream on YouTube, to make fractional amounts of money when you make a lot more from affiliate deals and stuff.
It sure is. Giddey out, Dosunmu out, Bazelis out. Get ready for Live Before Lock, everybody, because they will be able to handle all of the nonsense that just got created for the Chicago Bulls. Bellman, Lindquist, they're both up next. Enjoy Live Before Lock. Hit the like button, everybody.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to NBA Live Before Lock. What a great transition there by Jordan Klein. He's a professional. He knows what he's doing. I should probably make that a little bit bigger on my screen. I'm Eric Lindquist. You can follow me over at Eric Lindquist. We got my guy, Matt Bellman here. Fantasy Tips, Matt, over on X. Go give him a follow. How you doing, my dude?
I'm good, man. In a new spot today. I'm in Florida, so feel a little bit off. My vibe isn't normal right now, but feeling good and seeing your face just always makes me feel better.
Merry Christmas to you down in Florida. A nice warm escape for you from Ohio, that's for sure. Where in Florida are you at?
I am like 30 minutes from Miami in Delray Beach. Yeah, so it's a spot we go to pretty much every year.
All right. Well, let's party then. Let's party. Yeah, we got the chat rocking. Almost 2K people hanging out here, ready to rock for this NBA slate we have before us. And wouldn't you know it, just textbook stuff. Massive news dropping here. We're going to have to wait a little bit here for the projections to get updated, but 3 Chicago Bulls will not be playing basketball today, and it's going to change this entire slate drastically. We already had Lonzo Ball out, so we knew that. Josh Giddey out, Ayo Dosunmu out, Matas Mazelis out as well. Matas, yeah. Good stuff here because we got Kobe White chalk incoming again. We have Zach LaVine chalk incoming again. I think Julian Phillips probably becomes really interesting for this slate, and Nikola Vucevic is going to look way, way better with his rates absent those two. But no Giddey, no Ayo. Your first thoughts, Matt?
My first thoughts are kind of everything you just said. I haven't really had time to let it settle yet, so clearly I haven't run Sims or anything since we got that news. Looks to be a great game from both sides, and now the Chicago side just looks, I mean, you're going to need some Chicago in your lineups. I'll just say that. I don't know how much yet, but some for sure.
Well, shit, you could also need some Atlanta Hawks on the other side.
For sure.
With the Q tag, and I have no idea what to make of that. We still have half an hour later, Brooklyn, Milwaukee with Dame and Giannis sitting there. I kind of want them to play so we don't even have to deal with that basketball game. It would kind of be a disaster to work through, especially if it comes out late. Ryan Rollins, his tag has gone up. We do have Bobby Portis where, he's still going to be one of those dudes that you just kind of automatically click in the absence of both of them there. There's so much news that is going to be breaking here for the 7-gamer that we have here on DK. And then on FanDuel, where I'm also playing today, tons of news that came out there on the Utah side, which has changed the entire complexion of that slate. I think Lauri Markkanen and Walker Kessler, some of the guys there, but the backcourt is completely decrepit here too. I think Collier becomes interesting. I think we've got Colin Sexton there. There's so much to be covering here, so little time, but Matt, jump on into playback here. I'm going to put my mic on here as well for the people over on playback. It said no audio. We got it all set. We're ready to rock. And 1-2 wanted to let it be known, $2 super chat. Transition was decent at best. Hashtag overrated Jay Klein. Now, first off, people don't really use hashtags anymore, do they? That's like not a thing anymore.
I still think it's a thing, like just using hashtags in general. I'm trying to think about like when that was like huge. But it's still a thing. I mean, people do that. It's just not as big as it used to be. I do not do that.
Yeah, I was going to say I used to as well because, I used to be a kid. Now I'm an adult. I'm a grizzled human who's tired of social media and its constructs. But we are very much here for slander for Jordan Klein from time to time to keep him honest, to keep him chill. Although his hair looks pretty flighted. I mean, he's got his cap on. He's doing his thing. Anyway, we can see him. You can't. Let's get ourselves into breaking down a little bit of I'm going to just kind of cover FanDuel for the people right from the get-go because this is one of those special days I'm playing both sites. And Walker Kessler, Colin Sexton, Trevelyan Queen, shooting guard only eligibility over on FanDuel, yet going to be pulling quite a bit of ownership. Jalen Williams out there against Indy. We'll talk about him on the DK slate as well. And then Mr. Micah Potter just coming off of an absolute nuke, a nuke that he dropped the other night. Power forward only over on FanDuel as well. Isaiah Collier, kind of interesting for me. Somebody that's coming up a little bit more than I was expecting to. But, I mean, Utah just looks incredible over on the FanDuel slate. Anything you want to add over there, Matt, while we're breaking it down? You're on mute.
Nothing as of right now. Again, it's important to let this Chicago news digest a little bit. The tools haven't updated yet. Sure, that might affect the Utah side. I mean, just because Chicago is going to look amazing on both sides. I know that there's 2 other games on FanDuel, and that changes the complexity of the slate, but that doesn't mean that Chicago is any less appealing over there.
Alrighty. Well, with that being said, let's start diving in here a little bit. we got a lot of Q tags that we're waiting on. So obviously a lot of our show is going to be sitting, waiting, wishing, 53 minutes of it, hoping that we get updated news. But we do get news. Brandon Miller is going to be in playing basketball for Charlotte. And I know that LaMelo Ball was pulling a lot of ownership earlier there, 33% ownership, your highest owned spend up by a country mile. I'm probably looking to get away from that a little bit here. I got to say, though, Brandon Miller, we've seen massive minutes for him in spots like this. It doesn't help that he's 8,800 over on DraftKings today by any means, but I think it makes it a little bit interesting to get away from LaMelo Ball there early, knowing that we have so much news coming up and seeing like a 5-6% owned Giannis, some of these other spend ups. I mean, what piece of news that could break here later is going to change your lineups the most?
Man, I feel like this is a conversation we have routinely, especially on these Thursday shows, because just weird stuff happens. It's got to be Giannis, right? Like, it's always Giannis. Is he going to play today? He's missed 2 games, so I lean no. But one of these games he's going to play, especially they keep listing him as questionable. So he's the big news, because if he's out, Bobby Portis is still too cheap. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, 7K Bobby Portis. I think that's the big piece of news that could change things seismically. I will say if Dame ends up in, Bobby Portis is going to be a guy we have to take a hard look at and figure out if the 7K tag playing alongside a Dame is going to be worth it for sure, because that usage, the assist rate, pretty much everything across the board offensively is going to look a little bit worse. I think the total rebound rate still right around 18% without Giannis on the floor. Going to be pretty decent for Bobby Portis there, but I think that's a big one. Trae Young, obviously, too. I think Jalen Johnson, pretty darn popular. I think he'll still be somebody who I get to in my lineups, but I'm going to have a lot more of him. I'm assuming the field will, too, in the event that Trae Young gets ruled out. Kind of makes everybody a little bit more interesting. And now with Chicago on the other side of that game, I mean, obviously, we are expecting all of that pace, no treble. It's going to be an interesting one for sure. I want to get the updated ownership here right now. Please, 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 please refresh. I want to see Chicago so bad. We got everybody else here in the chat. Eric's the best. I know. I really appreciate that. Let's get ourselves to Taylor Horton-Tucker too. Yeah, this is going to be the biggie for me. All right. Taylor Horton-Tucker, 3,700. Jordan Klein, I know we don't have the ownership here yet, but let's pull up the projections, because I think this is definitely the talking point here for the day. 3,700. Taylor Horton-Tucker pulling just an absolute incredible projection here. 27 fantasy points. When you're missing 2 of the main guards here, 2 of them in Ayo and Giddey, that's the guy who's taking the big step up. And if you get guaranteed minutes for a guy like Taylor Horton-Tucker, we know by this point he can get things done on a basketball floor. I don't know where that ownership lands, but something tells me it's going to be very, very, very high. I think he looks a lot better than the likes of Jaime Jaquez relative to what we have earlier on in that slate and in that game environment against Orlando. But your initial thoughts looking at these projections for the Bulls, other than yay for those top 4?
Yeah, I mean, yes, but also like THT, yes to everything you said. I mean, people love to play him, but tonight it's for a good reason. So 3,700 in this spot, the price tag certainly is not accounting for all these guys out. And yeah, he might not be a great NBA player, but he's a more than fine DFS player when given opportunities. So 3,700 for THT. Yeah, I think that he probably looks like my favorite, price tags considered, although ownership is going to be up there for him, no doubt about it, but it should be.
We're seeing a lot of people there in the chat bringing up the fact that Kobe White, he's done this to me, he's done that to me. It's like a scorned lover there in the chat dealing with this guy right now. But you got to take Josh Giddey and Ayo Dosunmu off the floor, and you got to look at some of these rates, guys. And it's just so hard for me to get away from a Kobe White on a day like today, where the mid-range is going to look really, really good here at the moment from the Bulls. But Kobe White, 20% assist rate, a little bit lower than I was expecting over the course of the entire tenure. Let me change this sample size here, because I think that goes back to last season. I want to see exclusively this season. And we got to take Bazelis, I guess, off the floor too. I'll deal with that here in a second. But Zach LaVine, 26.8% assist rate is actually the highest out of everybody out there. Pretty low. It's only an 84-minute sample size with Ayo and Josh Giddey off the floor for Kobe White this season. A lot lower than I was expecting there. But the usage, 26%. I think that has room to potentially go up to that 27, 28% spot. Zach LaVine's going to look awesome here as well. And then Vooch Vooch working through some of his rates, only 61 minutes absent those two this season, but only a 19.5% usage. There's basically nothing to mine out of that sample size. He's going to be somebody that you're projecting for a lot higher number there. We've got him right around 43.5 fantasy points. Compared to some of the other centers on this slate, how does Vooch look for you?
Vooch is going to look really, really good, because the other thing I wanted to just bring up, the spot is not apples for apples, but a couple weeks ago, I don't remember how long ago, we had that spot where like Luka and Kyrie and stuff were out, and like those Dallas guys, we were like both kind of right and wrong in what happened. But my point was that they were in a tougher spot, and like I wouldn't be surprised if guys didn't get there. Here, like Chicago's in a really good spot, so I'm not worried about that at all. That's the only reason I bring that up. So yeah, Vooch is kind of pricey, but he's not expensive enough for the news that came out in a spot that I think Chicago can be very competitive. So I like Vooch. Again, his price tag limits me from calling him like a must play, like I would a THT, but Vooch looks rock solid here at very least, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think we need to rerun ownership one more time. We've got like THT for 0.18% ownership. It's going to be a lot higher than that at 25 fantasy points where we've got him projected at. We took his projection down a little bit here, and still we gotta ramp up that ownership.
I mean,
well, go ahead.
He'll probably be the highest owned player on the slate now, don't you think?
Yeah, I do think so. I think so. I mean, he just makes all the sense in all the land. I mean, you want to just go from a fantasy perspective with Giddey and Io off the floor. Taylor Horton-Tucker, 1.1 DraftKings points per minute, 106 minutes. I think that's going to be about where you project him at. Every minute that he plays at 3,700 is super, super valuable. You put him in for 20 minutes, he already looks good. Like 20 minutes, he looks good. And I think that that's more on like the floor side of things here with Buzelis out as well. I think that's the big piece that I think has really kind of changed. Well, I mean, Giddey and Io out is the main portion of it, but just even getting Buzelis out there too. I mean, he's going to share the floor with Levine and White here as opposed to backing one of them up. And that's going to be extremely valuable, even at a fantasy point per minute instead of 1.1.
I'm totally with you on Buzelis, because it's not the point that like the usage that he's going to take over from Buzelis. The point is that they like Buzelis a lot. And if he were in, he could easily just play all of the minutes they're going to give THT tonight.
Do you think anybody else jumps into this rotation in like a surprising way? Because I guess, you know, there's always volatility when you're talking about a guy like THT, where at this point, you can tell the Bulls, they don't love to throw him out there on the floor. But I think if we get Julian Phillips at 3,200 starting, I think we can start to be interested in something like that. He's a 0.86 fantasy point per minute player with both Giddey and Io off the floor. I think that there's more opportunity for him there in that starting unit. I think we're all assuming THT's coming off the bench as is. He's just the drastically better fantasy performer. And, you know, you're going to assume that you're going to get a lot of those minutes without one of Zach LaVine or Kobe White on the floor. And those will be THT minutes. That'll be a lot of fun. No Lonzo Ball helps out, obviously. I mean, this is just a team that we're going to be rerunning some stuff here, make sure that that ownership looks a little bit more intact, and we'll be able to fire it all up. And while that happens, let me talk to you guys quick about Portfolio EV, because Greg Ehrenberg, you know him. He's usually my co-host here, or I'm usually just sitting there sidecar as Greg's talking about all of this money that he's winning over on Portfolio EV, but it's true. Gift EV, last day, $50 off. You go from $99.99 to $49.99. That is a very scary picture of Jokic for what it's worth. But Gift EV, friends, on your screen, it expires at midnight Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific today. And if you're in Florida, you have access to Hard Rock. We've seen a lot of people have success with one book. If you're in a state, California, you have an opportunity to play on Flip and Rebet, which is now available. Rebet now available over on the Odd Shopper. It is baked into the algo. So you are going to have an awesome opportunity at another book. And there's all these alt lines that they do not update very quickly. And you're able to jump on some of those. It has been very, very profitable here in the early going. Can't wait to share some of my results doing some of that. Gift EV, Portfolio EV, monthly subscription for it. Check it out for a month. That's less than $2 a day by signing up here today. So last opportunity, last call. Go to the link below or in chat there. You just had Jordan Klein post it. See, Jordan Klein, I think he's on top of things. I can't believe 1-2. Don't be a hater. But also check out the tools that have, again, been proven to win. Greg Ehrenberg firing up that thread on the daily, just over 50 days, up over 600% now in terms of his bankroll from the beginning of that challenge less than 2 months ago. Awesome stuff all the way around by our dev team. by Greg, by everybody else over at Odd Shopper, Portfolio EV, Gift EV. That is the code you use at the link. All righty, let's pull up these projections one more time here because I think we might have a fresh update, and that is what I'm looking for. Yes, 1 minute ago, just got fired up. Now we can talk. Now we can talk about Chicago and how important they are to the landscape of this slate. THT, 63% ownership. That makes a lot more sense to me. Kobe White, second highest owned player on the slate, 38.5% ownership. And LaMelo Ball still pulling quite a bit of ownership, although I do think that the tippy top of his ceiling has to be hurt by Brandon Miller being out there and the usage that he can accumulate for, even if he's limited in some type of minutes. I don't think he's going to be all that limited. I'm not going to play him at 8,800, but just looking at the top here, THT and Kobe White have become massively important pieces to the slate. Is there really any reason to get away from them?
No, I don't think so. NBA DFS is unlike other sports. We're like, sure, like these guys will fail sometimes, but it's so projectable. You want minutes in good spots like this. I don't really see the reason to fade these guys. Also that's with the caveat that more news can come out. The more news that comes out, just the better, there are more good plays. So in that instance, I would say that would be the only reason I would say that maybe you get off some of the Bulls. THT though, and Kobe White, I mean, as of now, I really don't see anything that would make me want to get away from them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, let's be effective with our time then here. I think that this is, Giannis out. All right, let's fucking go. We'll
probably get the Dame news soon too.
I'm waiting. We'll see. Waiting. Come on. You can't just drop the one and then move on. Dame out as well. All right. No Dame, no Giannis. Holy crap. This will be fun. This will be really, really fun. Let's pull up Milwaukee here. I know that we won't have the correct projections on the screen, but Jordan Klein, let's pull up Milwaukee here. Let's kind of move around the gamut here. We're going to obviously be removing Giannis and Damian Lillard from our projections, which I think right from the get-go, you should know by now, makes Bobby Portis at 7K way too cheap. And I know we were playing him at 4,500, and it was like a freaking Hulk smash every single time out. Now, even at 7K, I guarantee you he's going to be pulling a ton of ownership here when we rerun everything. I don't think he's necessarily the guy that we need to be having the long conversation about, though. There are times Bobby Portis doesn't start, and at 7K, those would be the freaky ones. I want to ask about Chris Middleton here at 6,500 because he's been over a 1.3 fantasy point per minute guy over the course of the last year and a half without Dame, without Giannis on the floor. However, we still have some type of a minutes cap. He has not exceeded 24 minutes at a game here yet this season. He's got shooting guard, small forward eligibility. He's a little bit more expensive than Kobe White. He's going to be somebody that we have to figure out what to do with in this game environment against Brooklyn. It's not great whatsoever. Obviously, a low total, one that I thought would be a lot higher come this time yesterday. But how are you feeling about Chris Middleton on this slate? Because I think he is very, very tough to get a gauge for what we should do with him.
Totally agree. You're one of the harder players to get a good gauge on what to do with. I mean, just because we know that he is too cheap for the Chris Middleton we know getting full minutes, but he's not that guy. But you also have Giannis and Dame out. He's shown he can get there in limited minutes. For me, trying to take like a 30,000-foot view at this slate, I think there are too many good plays, or there will be too many good plays for me to want to prioritize him. But I don't want to say he's out of play. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't want to say he's out of play either, but it's going to be very, very, very ownership dependent for me.
Yeah.
We saw him play on a back-to-back. He played 19, then 24 minutes, Cleveland, Washington. Goes up against Chicago. It was a blowout. So you have to keep that in mind, that we had a blowout there towards the end. I think we would have saw him play more minutes, but even still, I'm very curious to see where our dev team, where we end up putting him in for his minutes projection, because it's going to drastically alter everything that I do as far as how Chris Middleton looks. It's also, it's a slow pace matchup. It's not the most ideal spot. Again, I have this total way, way, way higher than where it's listed, 206.5 the books. I'm pretty invested in that total here for today, but I'm now rerunning everything because, you can go player by player on dunks and threes now as well to kind of get an idea of where things are going to land. And Chris Middleton, he is definitely the guy that I don't want to go crazy with his minutes projection, because if I do, and I'm wrong, and he's really, really popular, I think this is probably the guy that I'm the most nervous about from this slate. Now, Brook Lopez is 5,700. That started to rise up a little bit. He doesn't change as much as you might want. He will look interesting at the center position. I'd rather play him over a popular Evis Missy at 5,900. I'd rather play him over some of these other centers that we have in that mid-range kind of area. I want to ask you about the rest of this team, though. Ryan Rollins is now 4,500, but we assume that he'll be walking into that same type of role. How does Ryan Rollins look for you? Because we were jamming him when he was 3K and 3,500, but at 4,500, 31 minutes in a competitive Washington spot, only 22 in a less competitive Chicago spot that they put the clamps down and didn't have to push him, but I'm going to put him in for 30 minutes at 4,500. How does that make him look for you?
So this is not a take on Ryan Rollins at all. This is just a take on what you said about like the 4,500, 3K. We were jamming him in at 3K. And he's still pretty cheap at 4,500, but not nearly as cheap as he was at 3K. He's 50% more than he was. So he's a completely different play. Again, that doesn't mean he's out of play. I think he's fine, but that's about it. Again, the context of this slate doesn't call for me to want to play or want to jam in a $4,500 Ryan Rollins. To me, he looks like I guess a contrarian pivot off of like a Trevor and Queen, but Queen is, $1,000 less. So I feel better about that. Again, I don't want to say Rollins is out of play because maybe his 3K price tag was just way too cheap for who he is, but it's not like he had been amazing. I mean, he's been solid, but you probably want more than what he's given you for 4,500 now. And again, he faced Washington and Chicago. Now he's matched up with Brooklyn. I think I'm good on Rollins. How do you see it?
I'm going to want to play a lot of him, I think. I'm running some stuff here in the background. Obviously, I think we got an ownership, not an ownership update. I think we got a projections update. Let me check. Nope, we didn't yet. Obviously, this is a very, very important one. And obviously, this is something that we don't want to be rushing to put out just for the sake of putting it out. So the guys are putting in the work here right now. You didn't get any minutes for Brook Lopez, Ryan Rollins, Andre Jackson Jr., Bobby Portis played a little bit, and Chris Middleton played a little bit in that fourth quarter. But I think the reason Ryan Rollins has looked worse, or is going to look worse, is mainly the $1,000 price hike. That's not going to surprise anybody. But in a competitive spot, I got to think that all the minutes that went to Delon Wright, he played the entire fourth quarter against the Bulls. And that's just not realistic, I think, in a competitive spot, which this is going to definitely project out to be a lot more so without Giannis and Dame out there. It would have looked like an evisceration, and basically the inverse of it here. But this game starts at 8 p.m. Eastern time. We will have gotten ownership, and we'll know what happens at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time with the Chicago-Atlanta game and all the Chicago pieces. And I don't know. I feel like I'm going to take a lot of shots on ancillary pieces, pending what the ownership shows out at. And Delon Wright, the 26 minutes he played against Chicago, 25 and a half there. Congratulations to him there. Trae Young available to play for what it's worth. But I look at Ryan Rollins as maybe if everybody really, really gets away from him, I will probably end up jamming, which scares me a little bit. We'll see. We got news. Oh, there you go. Bogdanovich ruled out. So we do have a little bit of Atlanta news. Maybe a little bit of a minutes bump. I mean, all these guys, whether it's Vit Krejci, Garrison Matthews, nobody really is going to benefit without Bogdanovich out there. Maybe resuscitate a little bit where those minutes might be able to be, 2-3 bumped up. But otherwise, anything with Bogdanovich ruled out, we got Trae Young in, which is way more important.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, on a smaller slate with less news, maybe that would matter more, but not really, especially with Trae Young in. So, no.
All right, back to the Bucks. Let's talk about ancillary pieces here too, because I think just like the Bulls, where you get like a Julian Phillips, if he ends up in that starting lineup, I think we could really, really be looking at sneaky value to build into our lineups right from the get-go. I love Ryan Rollins. I love Bobby Portis. What else do you stands out here? Because again, Chris Middleton, we covered. Brook Lopez, a little bit we covered as well. I think they're going to be fine options, but pale in comparison to Ryan Rollins and Bobby Portis for me. How do you feel about these ancillary guys? Because I've got one guy in mind I might be overweight too.
Well, I will say, you might have sold me more on Rollins than I initially had thought I would be, just because I liked your points, and he's still only 4,500, and I've always thought he was a talented guy that just never really got a fair shot. So I'm about the Rollins play. Aside from that, on Milwaukee, it's really just what do you do with Middleton? But after that, again, there's too many guys in play here. We've only really talked about two teams, Chicago and Milwaukee, and it makes sense because those are the two most important teams. But lest we not forget, there are plenty of other good spots on this slate.
Yeah, there sure are, but these are the two most important at the moment, I think.
I'm not saying that as like we shouldn't have been talking about it. I'm just saying it as like there will be other players in other spots we'll want to roster.
Okay. Yeah, I know what you mean there. My big question is what we end up doing. Oh, God, it's just so hard to think about here right now. Gary Trent is at least interesting to me. He ended up not playing that full fourth quarter, whereas DeLon Wright did. And Gary Trent at 4,200 is going to get absolutely no attention. I think AJ Green, we have a little bit better projection on, but I feel as though we could be walking into a spot with Gary Trent at 4,200 with shooting guard, small forward eligibility. We're 1 for 1. Again, if people are going to flock towards the projection of it with AJ Green, there's a chance that it ends up being like in a more competitive spot. Like there's no reason Gary Trent couldn't close over Andre Jackson Jr. In fact, I think he kind of does in more spots than not. He played 31 minutes against Washington, 31 in a competitive spot, was knocking down some shots. It's kind of been the issue with him at times this season. He's shooting right around 40% from three, but he was kind of required to do a lot of different things for this team. 42% from the field isn't exactly fantastic by any means whatsoever, but I find him to be probably my favorite tournament option of these non-top 4 guys for Milwaukee. I think we kind of know who those are, but Gary Trent's the guy I think I'm probably going to end up taking shots on. Taurean Prince coming off the bench, that's not really appealing to me with his usage and some of these other numbers. Ben Simmons available to play on the other side for Brooklyn, so that's going to help this game stay a little bit more intact. But talk to me if there's anything else you want to cover on Milwaukee before we move on. And yes, we got everything updated, which I'm excited to show everybody.
I respect the Gary Trent call. Again, I'm not sure it's needed on this slate, but I think your point was well taken that it's just a tournament play. The tools aren't going to like him. I can't imagine you'll get much in the Sims, but I could see it. I mean, I could certainly see it, so I'll say that. I don't really have much else on Milwaukee. Like, I think that the tools and the Sims are going to like Brook Lopez a little bit more than I do. Again, not like I think he's a bad play, but it's just tough with the center spot. And that was my other point about Rollins. It's also not really about Rollins himself as much as it is about the point guard position too. So just a lot of decisions are going to have to be made on this slate. You did sell me on Rollins, though. I will totally admit that.
Danny Bizzo 19, you burnt me on Rollins the other night. He blows. No, they blew out Chicago. They ran them out of the gym. He was pretty good if you watch the game, but why would you watch the game when, you could just say stuff in chat? Ryan Rollins knocked down, it was a couple threes I know that he made in
stuff
that
like
game.
That makes me like Rollins more.
Yeah, I like Ryan Rollins. Oh, yes, we are going to like Ryan Rollins a lot. 31 fantasy points, right around that on DraftKings that he's projected for. Hello, how are you this fine day at 4,500? He's going to be one of the most popular plays on the slate with that kind of a projection here. We also just got an update 1 minute ago. We're rerunning ownership. Thank you so much to the dev team for being helpful behind the scenes. But Bobby Portis confirmed going to be one of my highest owned placeholder pieces as I'm building out stuff right now. With all this value that we just got added, though, let's get to Trevelin Queen, where I feel a lot more comfortable fading Trevelin Queen now based on all of this news that just dropped. I thought Trevelin Queen would end up being my most popular piece on today's slate. And now I can't wait to not roster him because multiple things. One, he's going to be very, very popular. Two, he is going to be 3,600 with shooting guard only eligibility. And I'm saying this more for FanDuel for what it's worth. At 3,600 on DK, I think he's still fine. Like, I'm not going to do anything special at 3,600 to get away from that. But at 4,300, shooting guard is stacked on FanDuel today. We have Colin Sexton there at 5,900, where I think he's one of the best value plays that we have on the entire slate there. We have Ryan Rollins, who's 4,500 shooting guard only eligibility, projected for a flat 30 on FanDuel. Trevelin Queen on FanDuel going to be somebody I'm pretty excited to get away from. And wouldn't you know, THT, shooting guard only at 4K. What an unbelievable position on FanDuel today, Matt.
Yeah. I don't know what to do about Queen because I think your points are like really well taken. And I do kind of feel like playing Queen in this spot is like buying him off his nut high because like he's been around for a minute and I feel like he's never really been a good DFS player. Not that he's been given much of an opportunity, but I'm also kind of thinking that maybe his ownership goes down a lot because of all this new news that's coming in, Rollins specifically. But maybe that's just not the case. Maybe more people are like whoever in chat that doesn't want to play Rollins. So it's an interesting one. Again, because you only need so much value. Like once you start playing THT, Queen, and Rollins, like you got to spend up everywhere else. So we'll see how the rest of the news shakes out, I guess.
I gotta double check one thing here right now because, Mark Williams, second straight start for him here for Charlotte. That's going to be an interesting one, sub 5K for both of those starting centers against Washington. I have no idea what they're doing right now with those guys. I mean, Mark Williams played 19 minutes against Houston, 19 against Washington. Nick Richards played 13 minutes against Houston, 30 against Philly. That was pretty wild. He ended up getting the start in that spot, I know for sure, but sub 5K for both of them against Charlotte. I feel like I want to take shots on something there at the center position, but I'm not sure exactly what it is. It's probably the starter in Mark Williams, if I'm guessing, but I think center was Zach Edey at 5,100, assuming that he starts Vooch at 8,300, Brook Lopez, 5,700. You could play Portis, obviously, at the center position, too. There's lots of ways that I think we want to potentially utilize our center position that isn't a piece of these Charlotte Hornets, but God, I just look at that Washington matchup going up against SAR, and it's like they're going to be great tournament options, I think. Do you have a preference, or are you interested in a starting Mark Williams for Charlotte?
So, yeah, because it's such a good spot, and I think that he's too cheap. But also, like, again, you only need so much value on this slate, right? Like, the goal isn't just to play the best value plays in every position. The goal is to win. So Is Mark Williams a better play than some of the other guys we've talked about? Maybe. I'm not going to say he's not. He's one of the guys that I think probably won't get enough ownership and has the upside of, some of the other value guys that are getting the love. So I think he's in play. On a lot of slates, I think he would be one of the best plays on the slate. He's not that tonight, but he's still a solid look for sure. How do you feel?
I really don't know. Like, it's something that I wish I really don't know. I'm trying to just figure it out because I just see sub 5K centers against Washington, and it just feels like I should have something there. Clint Capella at 5,200 is going to pull a little bit of ownership there too. Yeah, it's really hard. I'm going to let the Sims tool do a little bit of its thing. Obviously, utilizing that is going to be a little bit more important. And speaking of that, Jordan Klein, I think we got most everything updated here for all of the recent news. Let's run a sim here for the people so they can start to see a little bit of what we've got here on DraftKings, where I think most people are playing. I'm going to be playing both sites. If you have any FanDuel specific questions, I'm happy to take those here as well. But I think the best use of our time, we have 3 games locking: Charlotte, Washington, OKC, Indy, Miami, Orlando. Talking through pieces that we can't live without here as we're waiting for 1, a starting lineup from Milwaukee, 2, waiting for any type of surprise injury news. Although I think most everything we've gotten answered in the first 36 minutes of this show, which I did not expect coming into today.
Yeah, same. That's nice at least that we at least can kind of evaluate now knowing who's in or out, which is rare for NBA, I feel like.
Oh, yeah. We have not gotten that a lot. I suppose Jacoby Walter being out could do something. Jamal Sheed being out could do something. Just like give us unlimited run to something like an RJ Barrett, Grady Dick as a tournament option. But yeah, I don't think I'm going to end up landing on anything there. Even without Jakob Poeltl out, prices have kind of adjusted where we're not going to really want to get to Mogbo. We have too good a value now on this slate. But looking at the ownership here on your screen, 69% Bobby Portis, THT around 50%. Zach LaVine pulling a little bit more ownership than Kobe White, which, I mean, that doesn't surprise me based on the limited sample size we have here. Again, Zach LaVine with Giddey and Io, a 1.38 DraftKings points per minute guy in just 74 minutes this season. But there is a undeniable, ridiculous ceiling there where it's kind of hard to get away from it. And everybody was saying Tari Eason out there in the chat. I saw that came through as well. Amin Thompson doesn't look as good as what he was, before all of this influx of news came in. He's now sitting around 28.5% ownership. And I'm more willing to get away from that than I am getting away from Zach LaVine and Kobe White there at similar positionality. What do you think about Amin Thompson there pulling 29% ownership?
I always love Amin Thompson. I think that before, like a few hours ago, maybe he looked a little bit better. He definitely did look a little bit better than he does now because of all that Chicago news. But I still think he's in play. Again, not as strong of a play. And man, I'll say this. We kind of talked about him in passing earlier when we got the Brandon Miller news that he was in. But I also think like this Chicago news and Dame and Giannis being out makes it harder for me not to play LaMelo. And I'm with you that like maybe his ultimate upside is capped with Miller in. I also think that there are pros and cons to a lot of things in life, most things in life. And Miller being in is one of those things for LaMelo. It makes, Charlotte is lacking talent without Miller and LaMelo both playing. So makes it more likely to make games competitive, just all that stuff. So I do think because we have so much value, LaMelo looks like the clear best spend up with Shea, an intriguing pivot, who I know you always like.
I always love Shea. Shea 2% I thought was going to win us all of the money and all the land that one slate.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, that would have been fun. We did get
Jacoby Walter and Jamar Chase
out. I know. He was putting up an absolute nuke. He had 40 fantasy points, and I felt so smart until I didn't. So the story of DFS, you're smart until you're not. That's kind of the way I looked at it. I definitely got my Skolansky bucks out of that one, so I felt okay. But, we just got some of those pieces, those ancillary pieces out here for Toronto. I'm trying to think if it does, anything for me. Kind of want to always pay attention to every piece of news coming in when it dilutes the bench, but I think they can just go to more starters minutes. They don't have to play all that much Davion Mitchell. They don't have to play a ton of Bruno Fernando. They're really short on guards, though, without Sheet and Walter there. I mean, Scotty Barnes probably gets a bump up for me just in terms of minutes. Doesn't help to have RJ Barrett that he's sharing the floor with, but I do think Scotty Barnes is one of the more appealing tournament options. I mean, it's Davion Mitchell. That's like the only guy, and I'm not playing Davion Mitchell on this slate with all the other value that we have here at 3,500. No, thank you, Davion.
Yeah, it's tough because they are really limited in guards now, but there's still no one you want to play, and it's not a great spot. I like Barnes. Again, not a great spot. From 30,000 foot view, maybe you wouldn't want to spend 9,100 on Barnes in this spot, but considering the value we have elsewhere, the dual eligibility, I could see getting to Barnes here. I mean, I just reran the Sims, and he's in my fourth highest ROI lineup. So, I think that he's always a good play, and tonight's no different.
Yeah, a lot of people talking about Cam Whitmore there in the chat. Cam Whitmore got all the blowout run. That's why he absolutely smashed. He was 3K. He's now 4K. I'm far less inclined to be taking a shot there. On your screen, we have Alperen Şengün actually pulling the most exposure, which I kind of agree with here. Amin Thompson, that's going to be one that, the field's going to be there. I mean, his simulated player ROI isn't egregious, but I mean, he is going to be overowned, I think. I love Amin Thompson. You guys know Asar and Amin are kind of my boys. I love them from a real life basketball perspective, and from a fantasy perspective, they can get shit done, but they are also very, very popular at the 6K number on a slate where I just think there's drastically better chalk in Kobe White and Zach LaVine. And then I think we have some interesting tournament plays, which is going to lead me into the nuke of the night, I believe. 19 minutes left. I want to get one more Sims run in here with everything updated here, with everything on the Toronto side as well. But Jordan Klein, if we have that, do we? Thumbs up? No? All right. There goes my dick. All right, we got the nuke of the night. Matt Bellman, who is yours?
A lot of interesting options tonight. Tempted to go with Jalen Johnson because I feel like he's a candidate every night and never gets as much love as he should. I'm going to go to another Jalen, however. Also in a really good spot. Also doesn't usually get a lot of love. Cheaper than Jalen Johnson. Give me Jalen Williams. Love this spot for him. I think OKC is just in a very good spot in general. Shea is expensive. but power forward is pretty weak. So I think Jalen Johnson is a really, really nice spend up to be contrarian option in tournaments. Again, only 17% owned. I'm getting a ton of him in the Sims. I like Jalen Williams a lot here. Give me some J-Dub at 8K.
Some J-Dub at 8K. I don't mind that whatsoever. I got to throw this one out there because we haven't even talked about this team yet, and they're going to be facing Houston, and I think that always kind of freaks people out, and, you know, it probably should freak people out. Did you see how many minutes CJ McCollum played last game?
I didn't, but he is on my good side because he was so good for me recently, so I can respect it no matter what.
Yeah, they went to overtime, so it's an extra 5 minutes at 39 minutes, but he had played 34 against Houston in this identical spot previously, didn't shoot the ball very well, but you know, isn't shooting the ball well? Pretty much anybody else. And I think the one thing we do have is we got news that Trey Murphy is going to be in here, but that doesn't guarantee that he gets like the exact same workload out there. He ended up getting dinged up in that last outing against Denver for him. Trey Murphy, any kind of limitations there or the opportunity to get to just like one contrarian piece, because I think the chalk, Bobby Portis, Zach LaVine, Kobe White, we can rotate through all these guys. THT, I think, looks incredible as well. Milwaukee, Bobby Portis. Yeah, you've got all of these great chalk pieces. We're looking for like one piece of deviation. And I think CJ McCollum and DeJounte Murray kind of nukes of the night. We will not see DeJounte Murray play this bad going forward. He has one of the lowest true shootings in all of the NBA, right around 41%. I mean, it's been egregiously bad to start off this season, but I just kind of want to take shots on this backcourt and DeJounte Murray and CJ McCollum. I think they look way too good for tournaments to be ignored in this spot.
I'm one of the biggest DeJounte Murray fans you'll meet, so there's that. Like, I talked about him a bunch, but also, like, anytime a player can put up 65 fantasy points while shooting 7 for 24, sign me up.
Yep. It just feels right. I mean, obviously simulated player ROI, it's, you know, just ever so slightly negative there, but I'm looking at some of my top sim ROI lineups and being able to get onto some of him really, really, I think could kind of swing the pendulum in your favor here. Somebody has to shoot the ball, and somebody has to shoot it well for New Orleans. Obviously, Trey Murphy can do it too at 6,600, but I kind of like taking shots on the lower owned pieces that aren't necessarily small forward. Shooting guard, small forward is kind of covered by the Amin Thompson piece. I think point guard, if I'm going to get away from like Trevelyan Queen, if I'm going to get away from, LaMelo Ball, 10K, I think taking shots at like point guard, shooting guard, and like giving up a little bit of the projection or just kind of going into that dead range, that like 8,400 range, 8,500 John Morant, I think is a great tournament option as well. Like these are the kind of guys that I love for tournaments because it can really, really swing the pendulum in your favor if you get those things right. Even Fred VanVleet in that identical game environment at 6,900, I don't completely hate it, although,
He's so bad.
Yeah, I know. I don't completely hate it. I'm saying that now here as I'm breaking everything down, but
when I say that, I don't mean to sound like that doesn't matter for me from a DFS perspective. I just wanted to make the point that he has sucked this year.
A lot of Memphis talk now coming up in the chat here too, and I'm just kind of going wherever the mood takes me, wherever we want to, because again, we're waiting for some confirmed starting lineups. Obviously, we'll have NFL Live before lock coming up after us right away here, so I'll be in Stokastic. The Stokastic NBA channel, just hanging out, watching some news come in. If people have questions, you can tag me and ask me questions in there. I will also be in the premium Discord there over at Tails, where you can sign up 50% off if you use promo code Lindy50. If you guys want to come kick it there, talking bets, talking DFS, talking everything and all the land there. But I do like John Morant a little bit there for tournaments on the Memphis side. But we're getting questions about Santi Aldama, who I think I've just been a stand for all season long. I just don't see how we would want to get to him on today's slate at 5,100, power forward only eligibility. You're asking for these massive blowouts where Santi Aldama can take on some of that fourth quarter early run and really extend that lead alongside Scottie Pippen Jr., alongside, whomever else, Luke Kennard from time to time getting rolled out there in those spots. Just, again, this mid-range is so insanely good. It projects too well. There's going to be 2 minutes up for grabs in so many of these spots. Bobby Portis, Kobe White. Like, I can't get away from that. I can't pivot onto a 5,100 Santi Aldama who projects for 27 fantasy points today and advise it. It's just not going to be my thing.
Yeah, I've been a huge Santi fan forever since he was at Loyola just balling. But this is not the slate for it. I'm with you. Before the news came out, and if you were projecting like everyone in, he would have looked okay because he's relatively cheap at 5,100. The problem is exactly what you said. Like, you just don't need it today. There's players that project for better that are cheaper. And as I mentioned earlier, like, the goal isn't to just play the best value plays across the board. It's to win. And I just don't think he's really needed here. Again, he's not an awful tournament play. Like, I wouldn't take him out of the pool in 150, but I just can't imagine I would get that much.
We got a $5 super chat from Silent Assassin 313. What's up, guys? Love the content. We love you. We appreciate you. Can I get the top players at each position on FanDuel? I would love to provide you the top plays over on FanDuel right now. At point guard, I just reran my stuff. My number one play, Colin Sexton / Kobe White. I'm just getting an insane amount of both of them. That's also the case at shooting guard, although we do have THT and Ryan Rollins. They look incredible as well. I think, honestly, the cash build is Sexton plus Kobe White, and then putting in Taylor Horton-Tucker and Ryan Rollins at the shooting guard spot. I think that's where you're saving a lot of money. So you can spend it up here at small forward, Scotty Barnes, Jalen Williams. I think both of them look incredible. Power forward, you're definitely playing Bobby Portis / Jalen Johnson, who I think looks incredible, even at 9,200 on FanDuel. And rounding it out at center, I think Walker Kessler ends up being kind of the value play du jour. I don't hate the idea of going to Clint Capella at 5,100, but I think with all the value we have now, I think I'm going to end up spending up if I were playing cash today, but I'm going to do this in a lot of tournament lineups as well. Alperen Şengün at 8,800 looks awesome to me at the center position. Also, you could see insanely low ownership on some potential Sacramento pieces where if Domantas Sabonis with that illness ends up getting ruled out, he didn't go through shoot around this morning. Getting more Fox, Monk, DeRozan, Keegan Murray in tournaments, great. But from a cash perspective, probably going to be hanging out in that Alperen Şengün more expensive range than where it seems everybody else is going to go. So good luck to you. Hopefully that helped you out, Silent Assassin. Anything you want to add there, Matt?
No, I'm not playing FanDuel tonight, so I think you got a better read on it.
Awesome. Chuck Thurston, 499. Can you always give us two players for DK as well, please? Can you give us two players? Can you always give us two players? This is breaking.
I got two players.
Give me two players for DraftKings as well, please. Yes.
DeJounte Murray and Jalen Williams.
Love those both. Look at that. Man after my heart. He's here. He's out here. Just
I do what I can. I do what I can.
Yep. Did Nuke of the Night. So we got that one covered. Those are your two Nuke of the Nights. Feel really good in tournaments about being overweight to DeJounte Murray and CJ McCollum. More good than I should feel because I repeat, it's DeJounte Murray and CJ McCollum in the year of our Lord 2024, which has not been profitable. Any Lauri love? Yes, I do like Lauri Markkanen over on FanDuel, but with Bobby Portis's existence, I don't think he's like a foregone conclusion in cash, especially with Scotty Barnes and Jalen Williams, where you can both play them at power forward, and then Jalen Johnson. I'm really kind of spending up for those guys rather than playing a mid-range Lauri Markkanen. He's a little bit overowned for my liking at 7,400, but I think he's very, very viable when you have no John Collins out on the floor for today. So hopefully that helps out as well. Plus, there's going to be some type of swapping you can do between in tournaments, the Utah-Portland game, based on what that starting lineup ends up being. I'm assuming Micah Potter continues to start there for Utah. As for the Sacramento side, Domantas Sabonis, if he ends up out, I'm going to do everything I can to get to 6,900 Malik Monk. I'm going to do everything I can to get to as much De'Aaron Fox sub 9K as I humanly possibly can. And I will go on living my life. So hopefully that helps from a tournament perspective on FanDuel as well.
I just wanted to say, I was being a little bit facetious because those were the nukes of the night, but I do think that it's important to also call out, like, you like Ryan Rollins a lot, and THT just looks like a must play everywhere. So wanted to just call that out there.
Yep, I love that. Jordan Klein, can we do one more Sims run for the people? One more Sims run would be very, very helpful. We have 8 minutes left. I want you all to smash the like button here. Chuck Thurston, $1.99. My bad place. Top place for each position on DK. There we go. We found it. It worked. It worked. We're just fine. At point guard, your favorite play?
My favorite play at point guard is Ryan Rollins.
Yep, by a mile for me. And it seems like the field is lower on him. He's at 23.5% I'm going to have way, way more than that. So that's cool. If people want to just ignore that he didn't play the fourth quarter of a blowout run, that's cool by me, but I think he probably would have been in there. There's no guarantee he has to be in the closing lineup. And I like Gary Trent taking shots on him, AJ Green at his ownership as well. I think these are guys that are out there to shoot, that can have much more expressed upside in a game where there is usage up for grabs in the absence of Giannis and Damian Lillard. At shooting guard.
At shooting guard, I will say, this is weak, but Trevelyan Queen.
I'm not going to play any Trevelyan Queen, I think, today.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
All right.
Maybe I am.
Let me just
Maybe I am. I mean, we have a 35% optimal percentage on him. He is going to actually end up looking better on DK. So I was being judgmental because I was on FanDuel clicking on stuff. FanDuel, I'm not playing any Trevelyan Queen. On DK, I'm going to play Trevelyan Queen. So I want to specify that.
Okay.
I was on the wrong tab. Shooting guard, my favorite play is Zach LaVine. It would be the same thing here for small forward. So I will, for my second piece, go to... Oh, it can't be Amin Thompson. I just got done besmirching the good name of. I'm going to say Chris Middleton for tournaments. He's at 11% ownership. That's too low. And I was curious to see where people landed on him. I'm not saying that he automatically plays 30 minutes. I think it's very unlikely he plays 30 minutes, but can he put the hammer down in 25 minutes, 28 minutes? Yes, he absolutely can.
He most definitely can. I'm still going to say THT, though.
Yeah, it's the right answer. Power forward.
I mean, Portis, but since that's too easy, I'll say Jalen Williams, but Portis.
What do you think about Alexander Sarr? This is a guy that's definitely popping here in the Sims now as well, which I didn't necessarily see coming, but Charlotte and Washington. It's Charlotte and Washington. This game should be more competitive. Alexander Sarr, obviously, I think can be, somebody that's still out there down a dozen in the fourth quarter, but just saying it feels as though Alexander Sarr being a little bit slept on in today's slate.
Yes, I'm getting over the field on him quite a bit in the Sims, but my thing against it would be I like Portis and Jalen Williams a lot. I don't think salary is an issue. Sarr would just be a guy I'd want in 150s. But if I were making one lineup, I would not play Sarr personally.
All right. And at center, my favorite one is going to be Brook Lopez. Nobody wants to play Brook Lopez again. I'm just so pro Bucks on these guys that aren't pulling ownership right now. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, so we haven't talked about a ton of good centers here. I almost want to go back to what I said about Vooch, and he might look better just because it's not a really deep center slate. That said, my favorite's going to be Hartenstein. I love him in general. This is a good spot for the secondary OKC guys, Hartenstein and Jalen Williams. Secondary, behind Shea. So, yeah, give me Hartenstein at, 10% ownership, a little bit under.
Who's your favorite spend up on today's slate? We haven't talked about who we're going to actually be utilizing our money on to get to. And I find it interesting to parse through Trae Young at 9,200, Scotty Barnes at 9,100, Jalen Johnson at 9K. There are so many interesting pieces up here. Alperen Şengün, I'm getting to a lot more of than this last run. Anybody that you really want to highlight here for a spend up at 9K or 9K and above?
It's got to be LaMelo. Again, I don't like it. There's a lot of good guards, but he just projects the best. Again, there's no Giannis. There's no Jokic. There's no Luka. He's hurt. So, we don't have a lot of the top guys. It's really between Shea and LaMelo. And I like LaMelo and then Jalen Williams and Hartenstein, the secondary OKC guys and LaMelo. So those are my favorite spend-ups.
This is going to be so wild for me if Chris Middleton can just play more minutes for once, because I have so much of him in this last run, and I'm going to upload this. I want to make sure I get my lineups in. Make sure you do the same, everybody. And one more time for the people in the back, we have Gift EV. This is the last day. If you guys want to sign up over on OddsShopper for this incredible tool, and I do mean incredible tool that is printing out money hand over fist for the likes of Greg Ehrenberg, our friend Nathan Joyce here over at OddsShopper as well, and so many more. Today's the last day to get it for half off. Half off. Promo code GIFTEV. Get it for 50% off, $50. I know they'll talk about it here on the NFL show, but do yourself a favor. Start utilizing this in the NBA immediately. If you look at the results that we have posted, and they are posted directly there on the page, and Greg is tracking them every single day in the spreadsheets for you, you are missing out on money right now if you were in a legal betting state. And even in some of these other states where you have the sweepstake books, whether it's, flip, free bet, everything else, there's so many ways to be making money and so little time to do so before the end of the season. Oh, the tax man, he's going to come knocking on the door. But before then, get yourself involved in some gift EV over here, $49.99 for portfolio EV right now. All right, let's round it all out here. Anything that you're noticing with your finishing lineups? Because I know you're always playing like a handful of lineups, 2-3 big ones. What are you going to be utilizing in high stakes today that you think gives you a better chance than the field to win?
I think it's the secondary OKC guys. It's a tough question to answer because, again, we'll see how the slate plays out. But I think it's the secondary OKC guys, Jalen Williams and Hartenstein, who I don't think are getting enough love. They project really well for their price points, and I think they're going to be my differentiators here.
Okay. I like that. I think OKC, all three of those main guys look incredible. SGA, every slate ending in Y, especially on a slate where we don't really have the other spend ups. There's no Giannis, there's no Jokic, there's no massive hook slam 60 projected player. We're kind of parsing through 2-3 pieces here. And SGA is always fun in those kind of spots. Even Tyrese Halliburton at 8,200. It's a terrible matchup going up against OKC, but nobody is going to click on Tyrese Halliburton today. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, we haven't mentioned his name one time, so I like it.
No, we have not. But you know what? We are now reaching the end of our boarding walk, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, talking about NBA DFS, which is something Matt Bellman and I love to do. He is Fantasy Tips Matt over on X. Go give him a follow. We're going to make way here 15 minutes from now. NFL Live Before Lock will be coming up with Greg Ehrenberg and Lofty. You're going to want to check that one out. And shout out Lofty. Nice little 6K takedown yesterday over in the NFL DFS streets. You'll love to see it, Matt. But any final words for the people as we get out of here?
No, it was a good slate to break down. I'm happy we got most of the news early. So good luck, everyone.
Yep. Good luck to everybody. Obviously, smash the like button on the way out. We'd really appreciate that. And check out NFL Live Before Lock. Thank you, Jordan Klein. Until next time, I'm Eric Lindquist. Let's just go get that money, honey.